Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. All right. Hello, everybody. Happy Monday to you. For those of us in the United States, it is probably a holiday for you, in which case, happy Monday off. It has a couple different names. It is a bit of a political issue as to which name you call it. It's either Columbus Day or it's Indigenous Peoples Day. Whatever you decide to call it, I hope it is a good one. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope you all are doing well. We are doing well over here. We've got some treats for Holmes and for Indy. Both of them are joining us, at least for the beginning. You guys know how it is. They always come in and out. A spider invaded the studio a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see it. Maybe if I do this, you can see it a little bit better. There's a little bit of cobwebs here. So anyhow, yeah, I hope you guys are having a good one, whether you are, I know it's an international community that we've got here that are interested in the Menendez trial. So a lot of folks are probably still having a normal Monday work day. So in which case, I hope you are having a fantastic start to your work week, and hopefully, we all get through our work week in whatever way we can, either getting through it or powering through it, or or just being triumphant through it. However you choose to look at it. Okay, all right. So today we have the end of Lyle's testimony. We've got like an hour and a half of his testimony. Then we are going to hear from Detective Zoeller for like a minute. And then after that, we will be hearing from Erik Menendez. So we're going to hear, it's about like 3 hours of footage today that we're looking at. And Erik's portion, I mean, obviously, like, this is going to be part one of Erik's testimony. So we've got a while to go through here. The part on Court TV's website is like, it's part, his starts at part 58. We're not going to get through all of part 58 of the trial, because they, of course they separate it out into little portions. And so we're using those as kind of a guide as we work through, of course. So, hey, puppers. Hi. I know you want more treats, don't you? So anyhow, today we are definitely going to be needing some trigger warnings, because as I was, kind of working my way through to see where we're going to cut it off for Erik's testimony, we're definitely going to get into all the sensitive stuff, at least some of the sensitive stuff, the very, very, very sensitive stuff. So we definitely are going to need trigger warnings for today. There's one from Draco Amy. Thank you so much. One of my wonderful mods on this channel. Trigger warning: if you need, step away for a while or catch the next stream. Look after yourself, for all who need or want it. Yeah, because there's gonna be talk of SA, childhood SA, of course. There's gonna be talk of self-harm, like that kind of stuff. So or at least ideations of it. So we definitely want to make sure that we are maintaining our good mental health here today as we are continuing our way through this testimony. So if at any point during this stream you are having a hard time and you need to step away for whatever reason, it's not worth your mental health, right? So do what you need to do to take care of yourself at any point in time. Obviously, I have every interest in keeping people here, keeping eyeballs on on the video, but it's just, to me, it's just not worth it. So anyhow, with that said, we are going to be pulling up those trigger warnings occasionally throughout the stream. And also the mods also periodically put on resources for folks that are having a hard time. So any kind of information like that, I'm also going to be pulling onto the screen from time to time as well. So that is why it's going to be a little bit sensitive. It's going to be a little spicy. Okay. All right. With all of that said, we should definitely be getting into this testimony now. Christian Williams, thank you so much for gifting 1 Legal Bites membership. Very, very kind of you. Very early start today. And Laura Ann, you've been gifted a membership by Christian Williams. So welcome to Bite Club. If you haven't been part of it before, we'll initiate you if you haven't been. If so, I hope that you can join us on Friday for our casual Friday members only live stream where we just kind of chat and hang out. And often talk about law, often not. But anyhow, thank you so much for that, Christian. Very kind and generous of you. And Mountain Princess 207, thank you so much for gifting another Legal Bites membership. Tony P, you've been gifted a membership by Mountain Princess 207. So thank you so much, Mountain Princess, and welcome, Tony P. Welcome or welcome back. And also Draco Amy, thank you so much for this. This is the resources, mental health hotlines, and things like that for various countries. So if this applies, if you're having a hard time and you need to talk to someone, these are some great resources to keep in mind. We will also be bringing those on. Okay. Alrighty. All right. Let's get to it, shall we? And of course I say that. And then, oh no, what am I doing? I just stopped the screen. Okay, here we go. Now we've got it here. And unmute. And as always, let me know if there are any issues at all with the sound here. And with that, we will get back to Lyle.
Your cross-examination.
Thank you. Mr. Menendez, when the police left your parents' home on August the 21st in the early morning hours of 1989, sometime that morning they turned the house back over to you and your brother. Is that correct?
Right.
And between that time and one incident in December when they took your mother's computer, they didn't come back and take any other of your parents or your possessions. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Well, were you aware that they had come back and taken anything out of the house?
Sustained. The answer is stricken.
Okay. So to your knowledge, the only time that you were aware that the police were at your parents' house was after you had called them there during the 911 call, and they stayed there until about 8:30 in the morning on the 21st, correct?
Not exactly sure what time. I thought it was a little later than that, but that could be correct.
Would it be before noon on the 21st?
I think so, yes.
And did it appear that they had taken very little of your parents or your personal possessions with them?
Yeah, I didn't notice that anything was missing. I'm not sure that I checked, or I'm not even sure that I went in the house and stayed in the house long either, but I didn't notice anything was missing. Right.
In the days following your parents' deaths, you stayed off and on, or you went off and on to the Beverly Hills house, correct?
Yes, very rarely, but occasionally.
Okay, who was involved in packing up the house and taking your parents' personal effects away?
My Aunt Terry. I don't remember who else, really. I mean, they had professional movers to take some things that they shipped to New Jersey, but and boxes and other things of that sort, but I'm not sure who was in charge. I assume it would be my Aunt Terry, since she's the executor, and I'm sure my Uncle Carlos, who's the executor, also was working, so she was probably there.
I believe you indicated at some point that you gathered up some of your mother's personal papers. Is that correct?
Yes, anything with her handwriting that I could see.
Anything with her handwriting that you could see?
Right.
Did you do that in regards to any of your father's personal papers? And so after the police left your house sometime before noon on August 21st, you were free to go through the house and do whatever you wanted, correct? There was no one there to stop you.
Right.
Now, I believe you indicated that in the spring or summer of 1989, your father had told you that he had disinherited you. And I believe you indicated that he said it in such a way that you thought it had already occurred. Is that correct?
Right. It was earlier than the summer for sure. Close to the first of the year or somewhere around there. But I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
But he indicated that, yes.
Prior to 1989, had your father ever told you that he had disinherited you?
No.
So it was sometime, you think, near the beginning of the year of 1989 that your father first mentioned that he had disinherited you, correct?
I believe so. I mean, I could be off by, it could be just before 1989, it could be just after, but for some reason I don't remember the actual conversation well enough. All I remember is him saying at some point that he had taken me out of the will, and that there was no explanation.
How many times did your father tell you that he had taken you out of the will?
Just in sarcastic remarks, just a few times.
And what was the last time he had said that to you before your parents' deaths?
I think a couple of months.
Do you remember the occasion or what the surrounding circumstances were the last time your father told you that you had been disinherited?
No, I remember an argument with my brother that he had in which he was threatening to cut off my brother at some point for something small. He was just in a bad mood. He made some comment about that he spent all this money on my brother's tennis lessons, and he was furious that my brother was not answering the questions properly, not giving him the information he wanted, something to that effect. And he made a comment that he was already out of the will, and if he kept it up, he was going to cut him off completely. But that wasn't directed to me.
But you overheard the conversation.
I was there.
So then it was your state of mind that both you and your brother were out of the will. Is that correct?
Right.
And then sometime within a few days after your parents' deaths, you became aware of the fact that the only will that anyone had found included you and your brother, correct?
Right.
Now, I believe you indicated yesterday and also in your direct examination that you did not trust Dr. Oziel because you thought he had, I think you said ego problems or a big ego or something like that.
True.
Yes, based on the way that he handled the situation with Jamie. That's how I got.
Based on an intensive study of the University of my eyeballs, I know that that's true. Okay, sorry.
That opinion.
When you say, which situation with Jamie are you talking about?
A session which I was having some problems with my girlfriend, Jamie, and I was really wanting to work them out. And so I asked if she would come with me to a session with him to work on it. And she did. So we had this session, and he was trying to help me. And I had talked to him about what I wanted to take place in the session and get her to talk about her feelings and so on. And then after she left, his reactions afterwards and what he was telling me just gave me this feeling that he thought he knew it all and very two-faced.
When was it that you had the session with Dr. Oziel and your girlfriend, Jamie?
I think like November of '88, I believe. Could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure.
All right, and at that time, then you were in California, correct?
Yes.
And Jamie was in California?
It was one of the times she was here. She was traveling, but she was here at the time.
All right, and when she was traveling but was here in town, where did she stay?
She stayed with me in the guest house.
All right, and your parents permitted that, correct?
Yes.
And so it was because of that encounter with Dr. Oziel in November of '88 that you decided you didn't trust him because you thought he knew it all. Is that correct?
Right.
Right. Now, were there any other things that you had, any other experiences you'd had with him where you felt that you shouldn't trust him?
Not until after the 31st.
Now, I believe we were talking yesterday before the break about the fact that you and your brother had a conversation after you left Dr. Oziel's office on October the 31st, correct?
Right.
And during that time, you were concerned because you wanted to know what your brother had told Dr. Oziel, correct?
That was one of the reasons, yes.
And you wanted to know just how much your brother had told Dr. Oziel, correct?
Yes.
Well, you wanted to know if he merely said, I was involved, or if he'd given details of his involvement, correct?
Well, I wanted to know if he had given details as to what was going on as far as the arguments and the issues and the crisis and basically the things that would explain what happened. And he said that he had not. He had just said a few specifics of like buying the guns and a few things afterwards, but no details about the issues. So, and he had just said that he hadn't told him why, and Oziel seemed to accept that.
Now, why was it that you felt that if your brother had talked about sexual abuse, that was something that you should get angry with your brother about?
Well, I was just, a lot of my anger was that I felt like he had gone to Dr. Oziel instead of going to me. And it was more that I was sort of hurt by that. And I was feeling like, why did he do that? If he's suicidal, how come I don't know? And how come he didn't, come to me? And feeling very caught completely off guard by the fact that he had now told somebody who I did not trust. And the whole thing was very upsetting and confusing and frightening.
So you were very angry because when you went to see Dr. Oziel, you thought your brother might have told Dr. Oziel about something that would mitigate the crime, correct?
No, I thought, there were lots of reasons, like I just said all the reasons, but that reason was basically that he had told him that we were involved at all. I really was not thinking that there were things that mitigated that. We were both feeling very bad about what happened. And just the only thing going through my mind is that we had killed our parents, and there was nothing that you could say about it that was good.
When Dr. Oziel explained to you the confidentiality laws and that things that you said to him would remain secret, you didn't trust him, did you? In other words, you didn't trust that he was going to abide by confidentiality,
No,
right?
I did not.
And no matter what he said to you, you didn't trust him, correct?
Well, I couldn't be, positive. He was saying he wasn't going to go to the police, and I just wasn't sure if he was genuine or not because I didn't trust him. But I really don't know what else could I do but hope that he didn't.
Now, by November the 2nd, you knew that the police hadn't come to arrest you, right?
Right.
All right. So, like the evening when you waited for the police to come on August the 20th of 1989, you waited a period of time and you determined that Dr. Oziel had not gone to the police, correct?
Right.
And so you went back on November the 2nd, correct?
Right.
And during that discussion on November the 2nd, it was then that you became aware that Dr. Oziel might be able to help you, correct?
No.
So there was no time during the session of November the 2nd when you felt that Dr. Oziel might be able to put together a family history to help you later on?
He suggested that he could do that. And the only thing that I thought was good about that suggestion was that it would make him feel much more comfortable, make him feel needed and less threatened. He was feeling threatened by the way that I acted in the first session. And this would certainly put us in a relationship where we would need him and we would be trying to figure this thing out together. So in that regard, I was very relieved when he suggested that and thought it was I said, that's a good idea. But never did I really think that was going to take place.
Now, when you and your brother went home.
It's interesting how he's talking about Dr. Oziel. He's like, well, I just wanted him to feel like he was needed because that would make him feel a little bit more secure. Because he said that he felt nervous by the way that I was previously acting. And based on how we have observed Dr. Oziel and observed the other witnesses that have talked about Dr. Oziel, This answer makes sense to me. It makes a lot of sense to me. There's nothing about Dr. Oziel that makes me feel like he is a trustworthy person or professional, right? Like whether in his professional regard or just as a human being, there's really nothing there that makes me think like, yes, this is someone that I can trust with my problems. No, I feel incredibly uncomfortable with the idea that anyone has gone to him with their problems, because I feel like they have probably been somehow taken advantage of, or just otherwise had their problems exacerbated by this doctor. Crazy. Also, by the way, Christian Williams, thank you so much for gifting another Legal Bites membership. Very, very kind and generous of you. And Erica, you have been gifted a membership by Christian Williams. So welcome to Bite Club, and I hope you can join us on Friday. Okay. All right. So let's continue on with this. But so far, he seems to be holding up pretty well in this cross-examination. The answers that he's giving seem for the most part reasonable. Like there have been a few parts where I'm like, I don't know if I like that answer. I don't know if I'm 100% comfortable with that answer. But, to his credit, he has at various times in this cross-examination so far, talked about things, given answers that he seems to know are not great answers. And he gives them anyway, rather than trying to get bendy with the facts. So I would rather have a witness be imperfect, because it means that they're being, or at least it at least appears that they are being more honest, rather than if they are trying to be this like perfect shining example of like humanity, so anyway, okay. Yeah, it's a more realistic picture of what a human being is, right? It's somebody who is also more relatable than if they have some flaws that they are willing to admit to. Okay, let's continue on.
After October the 31st, and you indicated he told you some of the details of what he had told Dr. Oziel, correct?
Right.
And your brother told you that he told Dr. Oziel about the purchase of the guns, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Did your brother mention to you that he told Dr. Oziel about seeing a show or a special on the BBC?
No.
He never mentioned BBC to you, is that correct?
Right.
And what other details did your brother relate to you that he had told to Dr. Oziel, aside from the ones you've mentioned?
No details as far as conversations or issues and things of that sort, which was my concern mostly, but the purchase of the guns, the going back to the car to search the car afterwards,
The reloading.
and that I had shot my mom last. And I'm not sure what else. There may have been one or two more things. I'm sure that maybe one or two more things about the aftermath, whatever happened afterwards. I'm not sure. Probably that we dropped the guns off on Mulholland, actually. I'm not sure what else. Oh, and sorry, I'm remembering. The going to the Civic Center, I think he mentioned that too.
All right. Now, since I asked you yesterday about it, do you recall at what point during your travels the night of August the 20th it was that you took the freeway? Was that going to the Civic Center or coming back from the Civic Center?
I think that I'm going to object this misstating the evidence. I think he said he didn't remember.
Well, this is the question overall.
I believe I took a freeway, and I could guess which way I took, but I wouldn't know for sure.
All right. So your answer is you don't know.
Right.
Now, when you were talking to Dr. Oziel on November the 2nd, did you ever say anything about the murder, about the crime being perfect?
No.
So when Dr. Oziel testified to that in front of the juries, then he was telling a lie. Is that your testimony?
That's right.
All right. And I believe you testified, though, that there were many things that Dr. Oziel testified to that actually were either said by you or said by him.
Right.
And one of the things that you repeated here yesterday was the fact that Dr. Oziel told you that he felt you were menacing.
Yes.
Okay. Did you by any chance talk to Dr. Oziel about your father's theory about the Chinese Revolution and how he would have handled it?
Yes.
So when Dr. Oziel said that here in court, and he talked about what you told him your father said, he was telling the truth, correct?
Right.
And that is information that you gave to Dr. Oziel, correct?
Yes, it is.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel about the computer and the will?
Yes.
All right, so when Dr. Oziel testified to that, he was telling the truth.
No.
Well,
He was distorting it a little, but we did have a conversation about the computer and about the will. But he was trying to connect the two and draw some points that I don't think were accurate.
but Dr. Oziel did repeat for the juries what you had told him, which was that it wasn't done for money, correct?
Right.
And that is your assertion, correct?
Right.
And so when Dr. Oziel said that information, which is helpful to you, he was telling the truth, right?
Well, I'm not sure that he said anything helpful to me, but he was telling the truth about that.
Well, I believe he indicated that, I believe he repeated to the juries that you didn't do it for the money, correct?
Yes, I think he did, yeah.
And you told the juries, I think within the first 3 questions of your direct testimony, that you didn't do this for money.
Right.
So Dr. Oziel's testimony then supports your testimony, correct? In that regard.
In that regard, yeah.
Object, that's argumentative.
Sorry, excuse me. Dr. Oziel's testimony does not fully support the defense. Woo! Sorry, I choked on my spit a little bit. 1 second. Okay. This assertion that she's trying to go there. She's trying to say, I know. Yeah, sorry. I'm allergic to Dr. Oziel. So she desperately wants him to say Dr. Oziel's testimony is supports my testimony. Dr. Oziel's testimony is good for me. Yes, I endorse Dr. Oziel's testimony, but it's like he's definitely clearly listening to what she's saying, and he is standing up for himself in the way that a witness should be standing up for themselves on cross-examination, in a way that is respectful, and it is and it's not aggressive, but it is still confident and assertive, which is good. That's important. And so he's just like, I mean, in a very limited way, when he said that I told him that I didn't kill my parents for money, like, okay, yeah, I agree with that. Of course I do. But it's like, it's almost like she's picking at something, and it seems like she's trying to see how much she can get him to agree with Dr. Oziel, so that on closing argument, that she can be like, see, and the witness even sat in front of you and said that he agreed with Dr. Oziel on all of these things that he had said. But it's not working. It's not working because he's listening too well for the prosecution. And he's kind of giving it back to her, but in a very respectful way. So it's like he's doing it in such a way that you don't hate him by doing it. He's not being an asshole. He's being, like I said, completely respectful. And that's one of the best ways to do it, because you're not giving the jury reasons to hate you on a personal level, because that can impact the jury in the end.
Overall.
Did Dr. Oziel ever tell you during the November 2nd session that he was going to make tapes and put them someplace safe?
Yes.
And he did tell you?
No, he didn't say that. He said that he had made tapes and put them in safety deposit boxes, and there were other attorneys that knew about it.
All right.
Again, this is very specific. He's very specific about what he agrees with and what he doesn't agree with. And this is a note for attorneys on cross-examination, that when you have a witness that is hostile to you, that's every single cross-examination. And sometimes it's a direct examination, depending on who you call. But you have to be prepared for them to know the facts I mean, they shouldn't know it better than you if you're the attorney on cross-examination. You should know the facts just as well as them, so that they're not gonna push back on you in these kinds of ways. But let's see how she handles it moving forward, because he's, like I said, he's very specific about what he's agreeing to and what he's not agreeing to. And that's very good on him.
All right. So that he did tell you, is that correct?
That's right.
All right. And did you ever tell Dr. Oziel that you felt like it was in your best interest for him to stay alive, so that that information that he told you about would not become public?
Definitely, yes.
Did you make a joke to him about that?
Yes.
And what was the joke that you made to Dr. Oziel?
That I would, the way he had structured it with the tapes and so on, that I was concerned that he would, if he ever died in any strange way, that now all this about whatever my brother had said would be released. And so that if a burglar, and I gave him a joke, that if a burglar ever went into his home and was going to kill him or threaten him, he might see me there, or I'd have to be there to kill the burglar and protect Dr. Oziel.
All right. So you actually did say that to him. Is that correct?
Something to that effect, yeah.
And that sounds very familiar to you.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Now, at the end,
Which kind of makes sense, though. I hadn't thought about it until it came up, in his testimony, that he had done the same thing with a previous client. So who's to say that the previous client isn't going to then kill him, and then Lyle has to pay for that? So it's very interesting, and also just kind of just poor judgment on behalf of Dr. Oziel. If you're going to do that with a client, maybe don't tell them that you've also previously done it with a previous client, because then they're extra worried because something is out of their hands that they can't control. And obviously this person is coming to you already. Well, I mean, Lyle hadn't come to him. He was brought in by Dr. Oziel after Erik had been using him for services. But I mean, these are people that are coming in to a doctor, to a psychologist, to help fix some things, to help them manage their lives and move forward with their lives. It's just crazy.
end of your November 2nd session, did you discuss the fact that you were going to go on a trip with Dr. Oziel?
No.
Did you
trip with Dr. Oziel?
No, not with him. Did you discuss it with Dr. Oziel, the fact that you and your brother were going to go on a trip to Hawaii?
We may have, yes. We were planning on going on a trip, so we may have.
All right. So at that time, you were planning to go with your brother on some sort of vacation to Hawaii or someplace like Hawaii?
Right.
Okay. Now, I believe you indicated on your direct examination that Dr. Oziel repeated something which you say is untrue. And Dr. Oziel said that your father told you, you can kill me if you want to, but you won't get anything. And I think you indicated that I would be in a hospital if I had intimated that I would kill or hurt him. Do you remember saying that?
Right, and so would anybody else, I would think.
All right, now on the night of August the 17th, the night that your father got home from the trip and you had the conversation with him, you indicated to the jury that you threatened him after you felt that your plan hadn't worked, correct?
Right.
And your father did not put you in the hospital when you threatened him, did he?
No, he was going to kill me instead.
Okay, but
I didn't threaten his life, and I certainly could never make a statement like that. We were having a discussion about some very serious issues, and we were going back and forth, and I was reacting to what he was saying. But, from who my father is, and even from the little bit that Dr. Oziel probably knew about my dad, he knows when he makes that statement that it's just not possible. It's ridiculous. My father is not the type of person to give an answer like, well, you won't get the money. If somebody says something that disrespectful to him, he just goes off. He does not react in that way. It's not possible.
And yet when you told your father that you were going to expose him to the world as a child molester, he didn't put you in the hospital that night, did he?
No.
In fact, he didn't put you in the hospital at all between the 17th and the 20th of August, correct?
No, he didn't.
I would think that based on the prior experience that he had with his father going off like that for any small thing, that's almost scarier. That's almost more sinister. I can understand why that made them scared, because they were like, wait, why am I not getting beaten down by my father, who, routinely would do that for the slightest transgression? And now this is a really big deal, and he's not physically reacting in the moment. He's just sitting there, sitting back calmly. Why is he so calm? What is he doing? What is he thinking? What is he planning? It makes sense to me.
Now, during the November 2nd session, did your brother ever mention the fact that your mother had been locking the door to her bedroom?
No, not in front of me.
All right. So is that something? Well, was your mother locking the door to the bedroom during the period of time preceding her death?
No, but she did lock the door, so I don't know if he mentioned that.
Now, I believe you indicated. May I have a moment, please, Your Honor? I believe you indicated at one point during your discussion with Dr. Oziel that he gave you an example of two different kinds of killings, one of which was an emotional reaction to something like finding your spouse in bed with someone else or something like that. And then he described another kind of killing in which there was a great deal of, well, there was a lot less emotion, I think, would be. No?
No, he didn't say that, no.
Well, I'm paraphrasing it then. He described an emotional murder, and he described a murder that had to do with solving a problem. I think that's what you testified to on direct.
Yeah, similar. He basically described it as something where you know what the problem is. It's like an ongoing thing, and then what happened solved the problem. And mentioned something about that it was emotional, but that what happened solved the problem, and so there wasn't there anymore. Basically what he was saying. And
that particular description, the two descriptions that Dr. Oziel gave you, came after a question that you had asked of Dr. Oziel, didn't it?
No.
All right, so...
he was trying to... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, so my question is this. Did Dr. Oziel mention the term sociopath to you right before he described these two kinds of killings?
No.
And so it's your testimony that at no time during the November 2nd session did Dr. Oziel use the term sociopath. Is that correct?
No, he wouldn't have said that.
He wouldn't have said that?
I don't think he would have been talking about... I mean, sociopath is a bad word, and this, we were trying to put things... We were talking about positive things in this session because, like you said, he was saying he could help us in a trial, and he was looking for mitigating factors. And he just there wasn't any conversation about, bad characterizations of why this might have happened.
And you were trying to put the situation in a more positive light, correct?
Well, he was trying to help us figure out why. We were saying we didn't know why, and he was trying to explain to us, why he thought it would happen, and not in a bad way.
And so when he gave you a description of the two different types of killings, right. How did that happen? Did he just say, by the way, I want to give you two different types of killings and let me see which one you think is accurate? Is that how it occurred?
Basically, he was fishing for the reasons why. And, then he came up with these two examples, and he just kept trying to fish for why, because we were saying that we didn't know why. And he believed that we didn't know why, and it was kind of something that just developed, and he was trying to figure out. So he gave me this one example where it was just like all of a sudden the guy had no idea what was going on. He walked into this room, found his wife in bed, or a situation where it was something that was ongoing, and there was a feeling that now whatever was there was over, was solved. And I felt that neither one was right, but it was more like the second, is what I said.
All right, so at no time did the term sociopath come up during this discussion, is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And Mr. Menendez, if you were trying to calm him down, and you were trying to help your brother, you were trying to find some sort of balance between what you knew and what Dr. Oziel knew, why didn't you just tell him, we did it in self-defense? Why didn't you tell him that?
Because I didn't want to tell him why.
What did you think he was going to do if he knew that you had done this in self-defense after years of abuse?
Cause for speculation.
Overruled.
I didn't think he would do anything. More than likely, he would feel better. But at that point, I just felt, based on the discussion I had with my brother before we went into the session, that we would not talk about those very personal things in our life that are so difficult for Erik to talk about. And he didn't even know what would happen with me. I certainly wasn't going to talk about that. But even the other things, I'm not just talking about the stuff that happened with my dad, but even all my mother's problems, what she was really like. She was a very secretive person. That's the reason I collected anything in her handwriting, because she's a very private person. And I just didn't feel that this guy should have that information. Just didn't feel comfortable with it. It wasn't something that I wanted to just give him without any good reason.
Which makes sense, because if he already said that he didn't trust Dr. Oziel, understandably so, based on what we know about him and what we've seen of him in person. But why would you talk about the most intimate and intimate aspects of your life, of your history, of your experience, that often carry this cloak of shame and all of these other emotions around them that are just so difficult to talk about? Why would you just waltz in there and be like, all right, today I'm going to talk about how I was essayed by my parents? I'm going to talk about this with this guy that creeps me out. He gives me the heebie-jeebies. No, of course not. Of course not. It makes perfect sense. Okay. And by the way, Christian Williams, thank you for gifting another membership. That is so kind of you. Roxana, you have been gifted a membership by Christian Williams. And also we have, let's see here, Pranav Oja. Thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member as well. So Roxana and Pranav, welcome to Bike Club. And I hope you guys can join us on Friday for our casual members only live stream. And yeah. So yes, thank you guys. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. I really, really, really appreciate it. Especially on I've talked about this before, but projects that are a little bit more niche, like this one, are supported pretty well by memberships, because it's people saying, yeah, it might not be huge numbers like YouTube channels are usually trying to get as big numbers as possible, because then you get ad revenues and you get sponsorships and all this stuff. But when folks are on fire about particular content and they say, yep, I want to support this. I want to support this content. It really does mean a lot. So thank you guys. Thank you. Really, really appreciate it.
But at that point, Dr. Oziel was the only person who knew that you and your brother had done it, correct?
Right.
He was the only person who could turn you into the police.
That's correct.
And you had an interest in making Dr. Oziel understand why you did this, so he wouldn't turn you into the police as a cold-blooded, threatening killer, but rather as a victim. Do you understand my question? You had an interest in making sure that you were portrayed in the best possible light to Dr. Oziel so that he would not feel threatened by you and turn you into the police, right?
Right. And I think at that point, by the time that he said that he could be helpful to us in a trial, which was very early on in the session, shortly after he made the joke about the Jeep thing, it was clear that he was not feeling threatened. He was in a much better mood. He was trying to piece together why this happened. He seemed fascinated. He was talking about maybe doing hypnosis with us later on. He was then talking about money matters at the end of the session. He was not afraid. I got a completely different sense from him. And I never got a sense after that he seemed threatened again. And he never told me he felt threatened again.
So during the November 2nd session, that's when Dr. Oziel talked about abuse as a defense. Is that correct? He talked about using abuse as a defense to the crime.
No, he didn't. He talked about helping in a trial, helping an attorney piece together what he called the family constellation, the dynamics in the family, that the emotions that might have led to this, in his opinion.
Dr. Oziel is the one who planted in your mind the idea of using abuse as a defense. Isn't that true?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, redirect.
like to mark 2 additional exhibits.
And actually,
One is
okay, so they're gonna introduce some exhibits, but there are a couple questions here. Let's see. Debbie Faison Cook, why would you tell your kid that if it was true? I think this was referring to the will. Like why would you tell your kid that you had disinherited him or her? I mean, the reason for that would be because there's probably some specific reason why the parent did disinherit their child. And it's some sort of a behavioral thing or a lifestyle thing that they disagree with. And they say, until you get your act together, you're out of the will. Which there are ways of specifically writing that kind of language directly into the will so that you don't have to change it multiple times. I've worked with wills. I've with wills or trusts that have that kind of language that basically say if this kid has not gotten their act together, and hasn't put down the booze by the age of 30 or 25 or something, then they're disinherited. Like there are ways of writing that out. But I guess the reason for telling him that was to basically make it very, very clear that he very much did not like the girl that Lyle was dating at the time. So very extreme, but okay. Whether that's wise or not is another question. Sophie 1518 wants to know, what points do you think the defense needs to address after the cross? I think, in my opinion, focusing just on like going back to like reframe the jury back to the mental state that they were in, the exhaustion that they were feeling in the days that led up to the shootings, the conversation, the reasons why it was so scary to them, the way that their parents reacted, the just basically like just going back to reframe the jury to those moments of like in their headspace of like why they would do this thing from a defense perspective. I mean, that's the most important thing, in my opinion, for them to go back to, because this cross-examination has had, it's gone through so much and it's been so long that a lot of those parts in the middle, I remember just kind of feeling like, I'm not particularly interested. It's not gripping me, and so it was easy to check out during parts of the cross-examination. Whether that's just me and my ADHD or the jury was actually feeling the same way is another question. But, there is so much that was gone over here that to me didn't feel very effective. So she doesn't need to go over everything. And now let's see, it's going to be another hour of redirect. It looks like, unless there's another recross in here as well. So we'll see what happens here. Your Everyday Sheep says, shouldn't Erik's confession to Oziel have been confidential? Like Oziel didn't need to call Lyle in, right? I mean, yeah, that's a good question, because Lyle was not there when Erik told Oziel about the killings. And it sounded like Oziel was not worried for his own life until he brought in, excuse me, I need to breathe better again. Oziel was not worried about any of it until he brought in Lyle, and he said that Lyle was acting menacingly or something like that. Like that was the justification that he gave for telling anyone and basically everyone about the confession, and saying that he was going to, keep it in some safe and with instructions that if he's killed or something or other. So yeah, there's nothing before that point, between that point in time when Erik told him about these things, and then Dr. Oziel called in Lyle. There's nothing there to suggest that he felt that his life was in danger. So the question is, like, how did he, how did he get beyond that confidentiality? The only thing that I can think of is that he may have gotten consent from Erik to talk
to Lyle about it. He may have said, is it okay? You know, maybe Erik also told him that Erik had also told Lyle about it. And maybe Dr. Oziel said, you know, I want to talk to him just to, you know, get a read on this whole situation, another perspective or something. Like, is it okay if I talk to him? And then maybe he gave him his consent. I don't know. That's a possibility. In which case the confidentiality is not an issue because Erik would have waived it. But without that waiver, technically, yeah, it's confidential. Arta Risnan says, question, salty licorice or rye bread? The verdict depends on this answer. Please disregard this or not. Sorry. Excuse me. Salty licorice. I can't say I've ever had salty licorice, to be honest. I would have to say rye bread. I love rye bread. Okay. All right. Let's continue with the testimony.
A message on Princeton University paper.
I bet that she's bringing in.
Dated February 1st, 1989, documenting a phone call from Lyle Menendez's father to the university regarding his room. What's the next number? 253?
The heart system. This is so true. It's shame. I mean, it's just, I mean, I guess I could continue because it's, we don't need any of these words that are going through here, but you know, and that's why so many people who are abused don't end up like stepping forward and speaking up about it. It's because there's real shame that is like, you know, that they're carrying, that is all around them. It's in the air that they breathe oftentimes. And that seems to be the case with these guys too, you know, not wanting to talk about it because it's a lot easier for someone to believe that they have some sort of agency in their life, which means that they are much more willing to take the blame and take the fault for themselves rather than, because it's a scary thought, right? I mean, just think about it. It's terrifying to think that someone else completely outside of my control can victimize me. And I have no say in it. No one wants to believe that. No human being wants to believe that. So sometimes the human brain does that in order to sort of like create this protection so that the person can move forward to be like, I had some kind of say in this. I had some kind of agency. You know, therefore maybe I can prevent it in the future. Yeah. Okay.
Are medical records from the Beverly Hills Medical Center dated January 22nd, 1989, documenting hospitalization for heart problems of Jose Menendez. May I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, you had indicated on direct that you had some difficulty with regard to your housing at Princeton University when you returned in 1989,
Yes.
and you had indicated that your father had intervened.
Yes.
Is that correct? I'm showing you what we've now marked as 253. Did you take a look at that?
Yes.
Can you tell me what it indicates?
I was in Wilson College at Princeton University, and this is person that worked there, just that my father had made a call to get my room changed.
And is your father referred to as Lyle Menendez Sr. on there?
Yes.
Is that in fact his name? Was it his name?
No.
And I'm showing you what we've marked as 254. You indicated that that there was some discussion with regard to your father not being able to take a physical because of some heart problems he'd had in January. Is that correct?
Right.
Showing you 254. Ask you to identify what that is.
These are the records from the Beverly Hills Medical Center, I guess on January 22nd, 1989. about my dad's heart problem, chest pain, other problems.
Does it indicate on there the admitting diagnosis?
Acute chest pain, unstable angina.
And I'm showing you what has previously been marked as exhibit number 61. Mrs. Bazanich asked you about a letter that you wrote to Donovan Goudreau.
Yes.
Remember that?
Right.
And she asked you if that letter reflected that you were a caring person. Do you remember her question?
Right.
I'm showing you that. What we've marked as defendant 61, or exhibit 61. I ask if you recognize that letter.
Yes, I do.
And what is that letter?
This is the letter I wrote to Donovan.
And when did you write it to him?
It's June 18th, 1993.
You'd indicated before that in that letter, you basically told him that you weren't upset with him. You knew he had to testify and that he shouldn't feel badly about it. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. Mrs. Bazanich had asked you about the lifestyle that you had while your parents were alive. You remember that?
Right.
She asked you about private schools and tennis lessons and clothes and cars. Did you have all the material things that anybody could have wanted?
I think so.
Did you have everything that any kid could have wanted in your childhood?
I don't think so.
What didn't you have?
Just emotional things
Did have
and
I'm sorry.
more time to play with friends and then just other things other kids do.
Did
Elaine. um, yeah. Just casual things, right? Like a loving, caring home, parents who, who raise him to be a whole human being, parents who allow him to have friends, parents who allow him to build the like social muscle that every human being needs in order to grow up into a confident and independent and healthy and whole individual as an adult. Just little things that he was missing in his childhood.
having expensive schooling and tennis lessons make up for the way you were treated by your parents?
I didn't really think about balancing it out. I was just doing the best I could.
Did it, having all those material things, make your childhood happy?
No.
You had been asked by Mrs. Bazanich with regard to your father's business affairs. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And she asked you some questions about how much he was making at the time that he died.
Right.
What was your understanding about what his future earning capacity was?
Well, my understanding was that he had another contract to be negotiated, I think that January. And as soon as he had settled on his second contract, the one in the spring, he came home and he was furious because he had thought he got basically screwed over and had asked for way too little, because they had said yes immediately and seemed thrilled with the fact that he only wanted what he wanted. So he was going to try and renegotiate right away and basically forget the other contract and do a new one, and ask for many times what he did.
And did you think he was going to get it?
Yes.
Why?
Just what he was doing for the company. I mean, for one thing, the company was heavily in debt and losing money when he was brought in. And he was the only reason that it became this phenomenally profitable company. So the owners basically give him whatever he wanted, because without him, there was no company. And with him, they made really a fortune. So and all he was asking for was percentage of the stock and percentages of the profits that he was making. So he would only get what he made.
Did you think it was going to be much more than he was making at the time?
Well, he said he was going to ask for somewhere around the equivalent of $20 million. And he had asked for somewhere around what he thought was the equivalent of it, close to $8 million before. And so to me, it was a big difference, and to him was a big difference. And then after that, I think he said he was going to stop and go back to Florida.
And you talked about the hospitalization, and you knew he hadn't taken the physical for the $5 million policy. Did you think he was going to take it in the future, or did you think he was never going to take it?
It seemed like he was about to take it any time. I mean, the appointments were he didn't say, don't make an appointment for me, I'll take it a couple of years from now. They kept making appointments for him, and he just was giving excuses. He was too busy, I'll catch it next week, that kind of thing. And but it was that he just wanted as much time to go by as he could, really, before after his heart problem. But, he had to take the physical so he could get the policy so they could pay the premiums. So he couldn't wait forever, but he wanted to wait as long as he could.
And this information is based on what he was telling you?
This is based on arguments between he and my mother.
Also, Christian Williams, thank you for gifting another Legal Bites membership. Very, very kind and generous of you again. Diane M., you have been gifted a membership by Christian Williams. So welcome back to Bite Club. And I hope to see you on Friday at our members only live stream. Okay.
You talked about being told that you were out of the will. Your father had told you were out of the will. Is that correct?
Right.
Did your lifestyle change at all in terms of the money that was available to you on a daily basis after your dad told you that?
No.
So you still had tennis lessons after that?
Yeah, it was after that he was going to buy the condominium, and actually things, the family seemed to have more money as the time went on.
This is an important point. I totally cut him off. Hang on.
I don't think that the will thing had anything to do with now. It was more a way of saying that he was concerned. To me, it was a way of him saying he was concerned about my girlfriends and that I needed to live up to what he wanted for me. And that included the right woman.
Okay. So this is an important point for the defense to make here, because it's basically saying, like, okay, Jose telling you that you were disinherited, that you were out of the will, was not intended to basically, kick you out and just like now you're on the street, right? That's not what he was doing when he said that. So his everyday life had not changed in terms of what he had available to him in terms of resources. And when I say him, I mean Lyle. This is important because it shows that it's not like he was told that he was kicked out of the will and then he's like, oh, like my life is ruined, my life is over. I don't know what I'm going to do for money. I don't know what I'm going to do for rent. I don't know what I'm going to do to put food on the table. I'm going to kill my parents, right? Like that's not something that he ever said, given the fact that he still had all of these things that his parents were paying for him, despite the fact that his father had told him that he was out of the will. So that's a very important point for the defense to make, because it takes a little bit of that air out of the prosecution's argument here to say that they did all of this for money, because by all appearances in his everyday life, none of the financial like none of the financial, like, I don't know what am I trying to say here? Like none of the resources that he had changed to fund his lifestyle, to fund any of the things that he was able to do.
You told us that you were hoping on Friday that your dad wouldn't go to work. You had this conversation with him Thursday night in which you confronted him about what was happening with your brother. And I believe that on cross you said you were hoping your dad wouldn't go to work on Friday. Why was that?
Well, I was surprised and hoping because surprised that he did go, and hoping because we just had this huge day Thursday, incredible problems and the threats back and forth, and this basically, to me, it was an issue that was going to change everybody's life one way or another, and was dangerous and so on, and it just seemed like I just was hoping that my dad was going to initiate a conversation with me in the morning and say, because we had all this happen late the night before, like after 11. He was going to come in the morning and say, hey, I've thought it over, and you're right, or something of that nature. And he just sort of, I just heard that he had left for work. I didn't even see him go, but it was sort of disheartening.
You were asked about running away. You were asked a number of times about, why didn't you just leave then? Did you and your brother discuss running away
Important point.
at all during this time?
Very important point.
Yes, we mostly discussed it Thursday night, and we may have talked about it a few other times during the weekend. But basically Thursday night, emotionally, everything that was going on, my brother was very firm that he could not leave. And
When he explained his reasons why he couldn't go, did they make sense to you?
yes,
And whether they made sense or not, if your brother couldn't go, would you have left?
I would never have left without my brother. And I think probably there was a lot of reasons my brother felt he could not go. And I think, we have to remember my brother he was suicidal at this point. This is why this had all started. He wanted to kill himself. It was hard to even, it took a while for him to get into wanting to survive. I got the sense that he was like, let them kill me. And that was the sense I was getting. He wasn't saying that, but that's what I felt. So he wasn't going to leave. And, he did clearly want to survive and took steps to protect himself and regained the feeling of wanting to go on. But for that one night and the preceding day, the days before, I felt like he was unsure if he wanted to go on.
When he got a little bit stronger, did he then feel he could leave?
No, he was adamant that we couldn't leave for very good reasons. But I also thought that there was emotional reasons.
Mrs. Bazanich asked you about the state of your brother's car. You had the guns in the car and whether people could see the guns or the ammunition that you had in the car. What was the back of your brother's car like?
Messy.
Just similar to his room, just except for there was, nobody to help him organize it. It was basically just his car, and so it was just clothes that would just pile up day after day. If he would go to a tournament, he would bring a change of clothes after he played or whatever. Everything would just stay in the car. And if he knew he was going to play tennis or do something and then he wanted to go out with some friends that night, he'd bring a change of clothes and, a whole different outfit and just leave it in the car. And then maybe he wouldn't go out. And then things would just pile up and pile up. And essentially, since it was a hatchback, it was just this ball of stuff that was sort of strewn over into the next seat also.
So
But all the windows were tinted also, so I don't.
So there was room in the car to have hidden guns under the clothing? Is that what you're saying? You could put
Yeah, I don't
guns-
remember hiding them under the clothing, but certainly could have done that.
You think you had them just laying on top or of the clothing, or do you remember where they were?
Well, we brought them into the house.
But when you were moving them from like San Diego,
Yeah, they were just in the back, and all the windows were dark, and I really didn't think about it.
you've talked about or you were asked about who cleaned out the Beverly Hills house. Right after your parents died, did a number of your relatives arrive in Los Angeles?
Yes.
And do all of your relatives live outside of do you have any relatives who live in California? I think you have your cousin Henry. Is that right?
Cousin Henry?
Do you have
Right?
any other relatives who live in California?
I don't believe so.
Or right around the Los Angeles area? Any others?
I don't think so. Not that I know of.
So did all of your other relatives come from another part of the state or another state?
Right.
And were your relatives in the Beverly Hills house after your parents died?
Yeah, my Aunt Terry and my Aunt Joan went in immediately, and everybody was in there because at some point they were working on the computer.
Did your grandmother go in?
I'm sure she did. My grandmother
And
does
your,
whatever she wants, so I'm sure she went in.
and your aunts went in?
Oh, yeah, both my aunts went in.
Did your,
Probably my Aunt Marta, too.
did your uncles go in?
Yes.
And your cousin Carlos Menendez?
I believe so, yes.
And do you know if while these relatives were in the house, they took things, they took clothing that belonged to your mom or took other personal effects?
They did take clothing.
Were you there watching what people took, or did people just sort of help?
No, I heard later from my Aunt Terry that my Aunt Joan and there's several people were, for memory's sake, wanting certain things of my mother's, and she was having a discussion with me about what we should do about that and whether we should wait first. And, so I knew that people had been there taking things. I don't know what, though.
And do you have any idea how many people were in the house during that period of time, or how long they were there, or were you somewhere else?
I basically stayed away from the house and stayed away from, nobody could go into the room where my parents had been, and I just felt very bad about the house, so I didn't go. That's why we stayed in the hotel. We couldn't stay at the house.
You talked about a series of events that happened starting on Tuesday and ending on Sunday night. You've talked about that here.
Yes.
And I think at one point you said that certain events happened that for you carried real significance. They were frightening to you, but they might not be frightening to somebody else. You
Right.
remember saying that?
Yes.
In your years of living in the same house with your parents, did you find that it was important to try to guess what was going to happen next ahead of time? Did you
What's
sometimes
she getting
have
at?
to make decisions or read signals?
Objection
All the
vague.
time. I think probably other kids do the same thing, but for me, for sure, with regards to my parents, because of the way they were, just from my mom's facial expressions or her tone of voice or the way she moved, and my dad, for sure, my dad controlled people with hand signals. So, but it was more than that. You could read his face and just whatever he was doing. I mean, if he changed into tennis clothes right away, or if he stayed in his business suit, or if he went over and watched TV, or, you know, the atmosphere changed very significantly and very suddenly all the time. So I was constantly aware of that. But it's been very frustrating trying to describe what they were like and what it was like and why I felt the way I did that weekend. And I felt frustrated through this whole thing, not being able to express that in a way that is the same as it was.
Why would it be necessary for you to pick up cues in the atmosphere or read signals? Why would you want to do that? Why did you want to do that as a child?
Because there was not a lot of normal communication. It was a very unpredictable place, my home, and my mother especially. And, you know, my dad could be violent or even, you know, just I wanted his approval so bad that even just shaking his head sort of made my heart sink. So I was always on edge trying to figure out how I could avoid that.
Were you trying to read the signals this last week?
Yes.
And were you talking to your brother about what various things meant?
Yes.
And did he seem to be engaging in the same process of reading signals?
Yes.
And based on all of the things you learned about your parents in your life, in terms of their behavior, when you saw the things they were doing in that last week, did you believe that they were going to kill you?
We believed that they were.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any recross?
Oh, yes. We are going to get some recross.
Mr. Menendez, what hand signal did the father give to you before you put the gun through the back of his head and pulled the trigger?
He didn't give me any.
And what signal was your mother giving you when she was sneaking away near the coffee table? before you
Sneaking
went out and
away.
Nothing. I was just afraid at that point.
voted? Okay, thank you. I
Anything else?
Were the signals you received signals that occurred before you went into that room?
Yes.
Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, let me see with the sidebar here. All right, what we're going to do at this point is take a short recess and excuse the Erik Menendez jury until 11 o'clock and have the Lyle Menendez jury reassemble here in 5 minutes, and we'll resume with proceedings with the Lyle Menendez jury only, and then the Erik Menendez jury, if you would come back at 11 o'clock, and as soon as we're ready to proceed with you, then we'll do so. Again, don't discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else, and don't form any final opinions about it. We'll see the Erik Menendez jury back here at 11 and the Lyle Menendez jury back here at 10:30.
Mr. Menendez, I believe I asked you this morning about whether or not your brother had related to you the fact of whether or not he told Dr. Oziel about a special or a show on the BBC. Is that correct?
Right.
Did a discussion or the name BBC ever come up during the November 2nd session that you had with
No.
Dr. Oziel? And when I talk about the BBC, do you know what I'm talking about?
I assume. Yeah.
What am I talking about? What do you think I'm talking about?
Rephrase the question.
What is the BBC in your mind?
It's a
Just say, is the BBC this?
What is it?
It's a broadcasting network.
Is that the British Broadcasting Corporation?
Right.
Are you familiar with another?
That's so frustrating because this is cross-examination. You can just say, are you familiar with the fact that the BBC stands for British Broadcasting Corporation? But I feel like she asked it in that way to like kind of quiz him on it, to try to put him on the back foot, which is, to me, is annoying. Just ask your yes or no question and be done with it.
Another form of BBC, another name that those initials stand for.
Overall.
They're similar to my New Jersey family's New Jersey country club initials, BBC.
That would be the Badenbrook Country Club?
Beedensbrook.
Okay. What about the Billionaire Boys Club? Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, heard of that.
All right. And had you heard of the Billionaire Boys Club before you killed your parents on August the 20th of 1989?
I assume so. I think it's an old
No.
show, an old movie.
Okay. Were you aware of the fact that it was a movie based on something true?
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, what was your understanding before your parents' deaths as to what the truth was about the Billionaire Boys Club?
Why don't you create some time frame here before we get into this?
During the year preceding your parents' deaths, were you aware of an organization called the Billionaire Boys Club?
No.
And when did you first learn about the Billionaire Boys Club?
I didn't learn about it at all, just that there was a movie about the Billionaires Boys Club, which was supposed to be about something that happened in L.A.
And it was about two murders. Is that correct? Was that your understanding of it?
Again, can we establish a time frame?
Okay. Did you know about the movie, The Billionaire Boys Club, before you killed your parents?
Yes, I knew about it.
And how did you know about it?
I'm not sure how I know about it. Just a movie that I'm aware of.
Did you see the movie?
No.
And you never saw it on television or any other way? Is that correct?
I may have seen it advertised on TV, or I may have somebody might have talked about it.
Okay. And who might have talked about the Billionaire Boys Club movie to you before your parents' deaths?
I really don't know. It seemed like a long time before.
Did your brother ever talk to you about the Billionaire Boys Club before your parents' deaths?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. In the movie, were you aware of the fact that a son participates in the killing of his father?
I'm aware of it now, but I'm not sure.
But you might have been aware of it before the killings of your parents. Is that correct?
I may have.
And were you aware of the fact that in real life, the name of the person who was killed, the father who was killed, was Eslamenia? Did you know that?
No.
What does that
Okay.
No, but I knew that Hunt was one of the kids, I believe.
And Hunt was the main defendant, correct? You knew that. Joe Hunt.
Right. I didn't know that he was.
The reason why she's bringing this up is because she's trying to thread this needle that life imitates art, right? That they got some kind of an idea from seeing this movie or from hearing about this movie that, I've never heard of this before this moment. This Billionaire Boys Club, maybe this is, I guess this is a movie that came out in the 80s. Maybe I'm going to need to watch it now just to see how relevant it would possibly be. But I guess Dr. Oziel claimed the brothers had been inspired by seeing this movie because it has a similar plot. Okay. All right. But he's already said that he didn't see the movie. Like he's testified here that he did not see that movie. So it's like, she's trying to, thread this needle. This is interesting. Your everyday sheep. Interesting fact. Erik was friends with Amir Eslamenia, whose brother was in the BBC. Interesting. Wait, so BBC, not just the British Broadcasting Company, but also Billionaire Boys Club. So that's why she's asking, like, do you know what BBC stands for? If this were an Emily stream, BBC would go in a very different direction. Only because it's inappropriate. Anyhow, So, all right. Trying to make fetch happen, not happening. As Maya Johnson says, she's not threading this needle very well at all, because she's trying to suggest that there's some sort of like this life imitates art kind of thing. And he's, like I said, he said that he does not, he never saw the movie. He's like, he clearly seems very unfamiliar with the movie.
A defendant necessarily, but I knew that he was supposedly, the BBC thing had to do with Joe Hunt or something like that.
And how did you know about Joe Hunt before your parents' killings?
I didn't know. It was just from the knowing about the show.
Now, on June the 8th
was it
of
a TV
1990, some paperwork was taken from your jail cell at the county jail. Is that correct?
Right.
Your Honor, may I approach, please? I have an item I'd like to mark as next in order.
255.
Mr. Menendez, I'm showing you a piece of paper. There's writing on both sides, but I'm going to show you the side that's got the number 255 on it. You've got some, it looks like organizational goals. Would that be fair to say that these are organizational goals for Mr. Stevens?
Yes,
Okay, so at the time that you prepared this, you trusted Glenn Stevens. Would that be fair to say?
I would say definitely, yeah.
And at one point in your life at police, you and Mr. Stevens were very close. Would that be fair to say?
I would not say very close. I would say he was one of my friends, and I didn't have many.
Right, well,
By the way, fun fact, I just looked this up. Billionaire Boys Club, there was a remake of it in 2018. That came out in 2018, starring Taron Egerton, Ansel Elgort, Emma Roberts. But the reason why we probably don't know about it is because it also appears to be starring Kevin Spacey. Interesting. It got according to IMDb, the rating is 5.6 out of 10. So maybe that's the other reason why we don't know anything about it. Okay. Here, let me share this real quick, and then we'll get back to the testimony real quick. I promise. Sorry, I promise. All right. See, Billionaire Boys Club, 2018. Interesting. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Anyway. All right. Let's continue. And we'll go here. Okay.
well, when you came out to California in March of 1990, you brought with you two people. Is that correct?
In March of 1990, right, Hayden and Glenn.
All right. And did you pay their way to come out here?
Yes.
Okay, and they were both friends of yours. Is that correct?
Right.
Now, did you ever tell Glenn something to the effect of if the police ever got their hands on some tapes that Dr. Oziel had, that you would be in bad shape?
No.
I'm paraphrasing.
Right. No, I remember what he said, and that's not true.
Okay, so you never said that to him?
No.
And you never gave him any money? Did you ever give him any money for the purpose of perhaps making bail or something like that?
Not. Not. I may have given him money when we got arrested, and just given whatever money I had on me to him. And I remember that, I gave him so much money that it's really hard to know, but I never gave him money specifically for bail because I never had a bail.
Did you ever give him your attorney's card or give him the name of your attorney in March of 1990?
Before I was arrested?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Shortly after your arrest, did you ask Glenn Stevens through your girlfriend to get something out of your Porsche?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and why don't you tell us what you asked for?
Well, I knew that there were just things with my mother's handwriting on them in my car, and I didn't know what was going to happen with my car. And so I just didn't want someone, stranger to go in and get them. So I asked him if he could drop them off with my attorney, which I felt was a safe place.
Okay, why didn't you ask him to drop it off with one of your relatives?
I would have, but at that time, the only person at the house was my grandmother. And I just, they were personal things of my mother's. And the reason I took them was just because I didn't know what was in them. And there were lots of things with my mom's handwriting. And she had a lot of problems in her life. I just wouldn't have handed them to my grandmother because she would have read them all.
Now, how long had you been in possession of this box of letters?
Since right after my parents died.
All right, so from late August then of 1989 until March the 8th of 1990, you had these letters, is that correct?
Right.
And you're telling me that you didn't read those letters?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, I might have looked at them and seen what they basically were, but I believe they were just from gathering them up in the house.
Did this box contain any of the writings that you had read in Calabasas?
I don't believe so, but I really don't know.
Because you hadn't read them?
I glanced through them, and I did not recognize anything like that, but it may have been.
In glancing through them, were you able to pick up what kinds of sentiments were being expressed by your mother?
No.
Was there anything in there from your father?
I don't know. If it was, it would have been just picking it up accidentally because I was trying to get things with my mother's handwriting on them. But so I don't think that there is anything from my father in there. There shouldn't be.
Okay. Now, I believe you indicated earlier in the cross-examination, I believe volume 90 at page 14911, yes, at line 13, counsel, that you segregated some of the writings. Do you remember using the term segregated?
Yes.
Okay, in order to segregate them, you had to know what they were, correct?
Well, I just took, I don't remember exactly what I said there, but I had a bunch of stuff that I took from the house. Just, objects, jewelry, things of that sort. All kinds of stuff. And I believe I had it in a duffel bag and at some point was keeping it in the apartment. And then I wasn't going to have the apartment anymore and I was going to ship everything to New Jersey. And I didn't feel comfortable shipping things with my mom's handwriting. So I segregated that from anything else that might have been in there.
Were any of the writings in there letters to you from your mother?
I don't know.
And aside from your mother's writings, what else was in that box?
I believe just my mother's writings.
Did you feel that perhaps if the police search your Porsche that they might find that box?
No, I didn't think the box had anything to do with whatever the police were going to charge me with or whatever. I was just concerned about the fact that they happened to be in my car. If they were in the house, I would have just left them there probably. But them being in the car, and also the car was getting some work done somewhere or something. And so I was sort of just nervous that my mother's handwritings, and I've always been concerned after my parents died about personal things getting out. It's one of the reasons I've been very uncomfortable here. And so I've always, even from the first interview, I was concerned about what would get to the press because I just didn't want certain family members knowing my mother's problems, especially, and some of my father's. So I figured among those writings, there may be things of that sort, and it'd be better just to keep them somewhere safe.
So that kind of makes sense with a family that cares as much about privacy as they do. I mean, what family doesn't care about a certain amount, some amount of privacy, right? But with how many secrets there were in this family, I mean, he's been conditioned to keep all of those secrets. So it makes sense that even in a situation like this, he would be wanting to do that. Now, what the prosecution's trying to go for here is that he's trying to cover up his tracks. He's trying to, get rid of evidence, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I don't know. To me, it just seems like it's a little too much volume here that she's going through. But by the way, Christian Williams, thank you so much for gifting one more Legal Bites membership on your way out. I know you said that in the chat that you are going to make some lunch. So thank you so much for gifting another one before you left. Very, very kind of you. The Heart System, you have now been gifted a membership by Christian Williams. So I really, really appreciate that, Christian. And welcome to the Heart System to Bite Club. And I hope that you can join us on Friday for our members only live stream. All right.
All right. So you thought that you didn't want anyone reading what your mother was thinking. Is that correct? Is that basically it?
Well, I didn't want him to know personal things about my mother that, I wasn't sure what was in there, but I just figured that whatever was in there, because she was very unstable, might be embarrassing for her or something.
And you were afraid there might be something in there as well that might lead people to believe that you had a reason to kill your mother, right?
No.
You weren't afraid of that at all when you asked your girlfriend to get Glenn to get the box out of your Porsche?
No.
Okay. And do you know where the box is now?
I believe it's in the possession of the court at this point.
Will you turn those letters over to us?
Objection, Your Honor. That's an improper question.
In regards to the last question and the last answer, the court sustains objections to both the question and the answer, and both the question and the answer are stricken, and the jury is admonished to disregard both the question and the answer.
You hadn't really read the contents of this box. You wanted to make sure that that Glenn Stevens got it from your car. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Now, at some time in early March before your arrest, did you call Mr. Wenskowski to inquire whether or not the Beverly Hills police had been at your restaurant?
Yes.
Okay. Were you concerned at that time that the police were in fact getting close to arresting you?
No, I had no idea.
Well, when you heard the news that the Beverly Hills police had a few days before March the 8th gone to your restaurant in the Princeton area, did that concern you?
Overall.
Yes, that concerned me.
And that's why you called Mr. Wenskowski. Is that correct?
Probably. I don't know if he had left a message. I guess in just calling the restaurant, I had heard that detectives had been there, and also Mr. Wenskowski with them. And nobody at the restaurant knew anything about it. So I called Mr. Wenskowski to find out, what he knew about it and what was happening.
Okay. Now, you had hired Mr. Wenskowski to be your bodyguard. Is that correct?
Right.
And you'd, in fact, hired the service that he worked for to provide services for you. Is that correct?
Right.
All right. Why was it that you felt you needed to have a bodyguard if, in fact, you knew who had killed your parents?
Because I was concerned with the way the media was presenting what happened, and with the fact that the company had hired bodyguards for the house, or guards for the house, that some of my father's connections might think that I was feeding the police information that they would not want out, and I was concerned about that, and I expressed that to Detective Zoeller, that's why I had them put the ass, and I told him.
So before August the 20th, you thought that your father was going to kill you. And after August the 20th, you thought maybe organized crime might kill you. Is that correct?
I thought that they might try to contact us or harm me in some way. I really had no idea, because I didn't think that I knew anything that anybody would be concerned about. But I certainly felt my dad may have been involved in something like that, and they might think I know. And because of all the press saying that it was mafia and this and that, I just felt that they might think that was coming from me, and it was not coming from me. And so I made a point of telling Detective Zoeller when I met with him, that I didn't think it was the mafia, and that I would like, unless he did, that, that not get out to the press. Yeah.
Right. When was the first time that you noticed that there was a bodyguard protecting you after the deaths of your parents?
That I noticed, or that I hired?
When did they first get hired from the Bel Air Patrol?
Oh, you mean for the house?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Okay, and you didn't hire them, the company hired them, correct?
Right.
But when you went back to New Jersey, you hired bodyguards, correct?
Right.
Okay. Why didn't you hire bodyguards to protect you from your father?
I just didn't.
Okay, so you thought about it afterwards, but you didn't think about it before, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, now I believe you indicated that at some point you were so concerned about the mafia thinking that you might be saying things about them that you went to a man named Anthony Negri. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that was because Glenn Stevens had indicated to you that this was a person who might have been a friend or who was a friend of his grandfather. Is that correct?
I thought he said it was a friend and a business associate of his father's, or past business associate. In fact, they had been involved in some company.
All right. And so when you went to Mr. Negri, it was your state of mind that Mr. Negri was representing the interests of the mafia and could somehow help you to get a message to them. Is that correct?
No, he was in the mafia, and I know Glenn said here that he only found that out afterwards, but he knew that at that point. That's why we went to see him, and he looked like he was in the mafia, and he was in charge of a security company there. So we went all the way to New York just to see him.
All right, Mr. Menendez.
By the way, that question about why couldn't he hire bodyguards to protect him from his father is an incredibly stupid question, because who would be paying for it? Jose? So you really think that Lyle has any kind of confidence that Jose is going to agree to pay for bodyguards for Lyle that he's hiring to protect him from Jose? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. That makes zero sense. Jose would be able to just turn off that faucet very quickly and then say, nope, nice try. It's such a dumb question. I wish that he had given that kind of an answer, but he seemed like he hadn't quite considered it before. But whatever.
Menendez, what does a person look like in your mind who's in the mafia?
Just from the way he talked, very rough. From the way he dressed, and they drove around in these little black Lincoln cars, and he had guys that had carried personal guns, and it just looked. And we went to a restaurant with him, and the guys there hugged and kissed him, and the son that ran the restaurant's father had supposedly been killed by organized crime, and now the son owned the restaurant, and it just seemed very much like it was the mafia. I mean, I wouldn't really know, but
Like in the movies?
yeah, like in the movies.
Okay, so did he have a Jersey accent?
I think he had a New York accent.
Okay, and he had an Italian last name, right?
Right,
And you said he drove around in a dark Lincoln, is that correct?
right,
Okay, now, and he also had people with him who were carrying firearms, correct?
correct.
Okay, and that made you believe that he was a bona fide, true blue member of organized crime, correct?
Well, I believed Glenn. I mean, if he would have been dressed differently, that would not necessarily have said, okay, I don't believe you. He's dressed in tennis shorts, but it's just that he also fit the description.
So he fit the part, is that correct?
Right.
Now, did you want to get a firearm for Hayden Rogers so that he could?
All of this kind of goes to his inexperience in these kind of matters. It's just, how young and seemingly naive in a lot of ways that they were. This doesn't make me think, oh, these are sinister, men, because he says he kind of figures what the mafia looks like. It's dumb. It's dumb. Spending this amount of time on this line of questioning is dumb, in my opinion.
He could bodyguard you more cheaply than Mr. Wenskowski's firm?
I don't believe so, no.
Did you want to get a gun permit for Hayden so that Hayden Rogers could protect you?
No. While we were there, Glenn mentioned something to him about whether he could help Glenn get a license to carry a concealed weapon. And he said that it was very difficult only if you were hired and working at the time. And Glenn said, well, what if I'm protecting Lyle? And you could just say I was working, and you could just say that you were paying me, and so on and so forth. And basically, the guy said no.
Now,
It'd be difficult.
this dark car, this Lincoln that Mr. Negri had, was that a limousine or was that just a regular Lincoln?
No, it was a town car.
All right. And during this period of time, you were traveling in limousines. Is that correct?
I don't know about that period of time.
But do
No,
you,
I wasn't.
do you remember Mr. Wenskowski's testimony that you and he traveled in limousines?
Yes.
Okay. And why was it you were traveling in limousines?
I hired the services of D.B. Kelly, and this is what they provided. They provided a limousine driver, one guard, and a car in the back. And he may have discussed the different options, and I may have picked that one. I don't remember, but my understanding is that was just what they were offering.
Do you remember Mr. Wenskowski testifying that you wanted to buy your own limousine?
Yes.
Okay, because it would have been cheaper than renting one, right?
No, actually, that happened much later, and this was in right after my parents died, and the limousine thing was in the early spring when I had lost my driver's license and was having problems, and so I talked to my Aunt Terry about it, and that was how that arose.
The early spring of what year?
Of 90, I guess.
After your parents' death? The spring after your parents' deaths?
Right.
And which driver's license is it that you had lost?
There was discussion with my Aunt Terry about my license situation, and I believe it was either I had a warrant out or something of that sort, and I was having license problems. It was either just suspended or about to be again. And then this discussion about, well, this would solve all the problems. And so we had a brief discussion about that, and I considered the idea, and then I decided not to do it, and I never did.
Okay, so was it your New Jersey license you're talking about or your California license that you were about to lose in the spring of 90?
I'm not sure. I assume it was my New Jersey license.
Okay, now you testified before that you took your California license and you mailed it back to the DMV. Is that correct?
No, I mailed it to my mother.
Okay.
And she turned it into the DMV, I assume.
Okay, so that was your response to a notice you'd gotten that your license had been suspended, and would you turn over your license voluntarily? Is that correct?
But she sent my Aunt Terry the notice, and Terry explained to me the situation and gave me the notice.
Okay, so are you saying that happened in spring of 1990 or the spring of 1989?
No, that happened in the spring of 1989 with the California license.
Now, when you went to see
Almost
Mr.
talking like me.
Negri, you asked him to do something for you. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what did you ask him to do for you?
Well, I explained to him my concerns with regard to that I didn't know any information about my dad's connections. I had no information, that I was not cooperating with the police, and that I was concerned that people my dad might have known might think that I was. And could he just let people know, if he was able to do that, that I was not going to be cooperating with the police and that I knew nothing. And also find out if there was somebody that was concerned about that out there. And he said he could do that for me.
Now, you were not going to be cooperating with the police because you knew who had done the murders. Is that correct?
That wasn't the reason. I just wasn't going to cooperate them because I was concerned the way it would look.
Now, I believe you testified as well on direct examination that the reason that you bought the restaurant is that you were at sea, that you didn't have much direction, and that you needed something to give some direction to your life. Would that be fair to say?
That's what my uncles felt, yes.
Okay, and so
That's what my uncles felt.
at some point you decided to buy a restaurant.
Right.
Now you had wanted to own that restaurant before your parents died, hadn't you?
Restaurants was something that I had been interested in as a kid because my dad at some point was interested in the fast food business and had tried to purchase Burger Kings and so on. But I never, it sort of was like a thing that I thought of when I was much younger and then had really not thought about it again until after my parents died. Although, well, no, that's not true, actually. I talked about it with Donovan a little bit too, that one of the things that I might do in the future would be restaurant stuff.
You talked to Donovan specifically about Chuck's Spring Street Cafe as being a good place to franchise. Do you remember his testimony in that regard?
I don't remember him saying that. I don't think that we had any specific plans at all for that, but it's possible.
And Chuck's Spring Street Cafe is the restaurant that you bought and changed the name to Mr. Buffalo's. Is that
Right,
correct?
exactly.
And this restaurant to give direction to your life, the purchase price was $550,000, wasn't it?
That was the purchase price, and my uncle put down a large portion of it for me, and then the rest was never paid, just went back to the owner.
All right, and this $550,000 restaurant was what was going to help you get over your parents' deaths. Is that correct?
I don't think there's anything that's going to help me get over my parents' deaths, but certainly not the restaurant. Just give me more direction.
Did you ever think of perhaps doing something like just getting a regular old job to give you direction?
I thought about a bunch of things. I just thought about, my brother was doing something with tennis, and I was really had said that, okay, I would go with them and do that, but emotionally I was not able to concentrate and do that. So then I was supposed to go back to school, so I was thinking of doing that, and then I decided to do this. So,
Do you remember the testimony of one of your coaches that you'd had a discussion with him many years before where you had said you always wanted to own a restaurant? Do you remember that testimony?
right.
Okay, so before your father died, you had wanted to own a restaurant, correct?
That was something that was like one of my dreams was maybe to own a restaurant and make the money myself, though. He also said that it was no, I'll get it out of my dad or something like that. And my thinking was in the spring before that these were business things that I would do with my dad. He had said that he would give me whatever money was needed if we decided to do business as soon as I graduated. So when he had that conversation with me at my Aunt Terry's, I started to think about, I wonder the different things that we might be able to do. And I talked about it with Donovan, and he knew my dad had made that offer with me. And so one of the things we talked about, I believe, was restaurants.
Okay, and was this during the same time that your father told you he had disinherited you, or was it at a different time that he talked to you about opening the restaurant?
This is the same period of time where I was out of the will, but the will thing had to do with he didn't want to eventually leave his fortune to me if I was going to be married to the wrong person. Is essentially what that. It didn't have
He's
anything to
explained
do
this so
with
many
that
times.
I was abandoned or cut off or my life was going to change as far as what he was giving me materially. It didn't have any. It wasn't related to that.
And it didn't have anything to do with the fact that when you left Princeton in the summer of 1989, you were on disciplinary probation. Is that correct? Your father?
Right.
And the fact that you were on academic probation, is that correct?
Right.
All right. And it's your testimony here today that you didn't kill your parents for the money. Is that correct?
Definitely not.
Thank you very much.
I get that, that's the theory of the case that they are running with, right? They have been saying since the opening statement that, these guys, they killed their parents for the money. They killed their parents for the money. They killed their parents for the money. And so it's like you want on cross-examination on any of these, you want to end on some kind of a high point. That to me is not a high point because he has had the opportunity now several times to explain what it meant to him when he was out of the will and why he was out of the will. why his father told him that he was out of the will. Obviously, it turned out that wasn't true because he actually, was supposed to inherit. In California. There is it's called a slayer statute, basically where, if you are set to inherit money from someone and you are convicted of killing them, murdering them, I should say, you are disinherited as if you predeceased them. So, because there's a very strong policy that you cannot kill someone for their money. Now, he's had multiple opportunities here to explain what that meant to him, and it's not that he, was killing his parents for the money. And it makes perfect sense to me. All right, last bit of redirect.
Mr. Menendez, you were asked about Glenn Stevens. Do you remember? And Mrs. Bozanich asked you if sometime prior to June 8th, 1990, you prepared a document which reflected that you trusted Glenn.
Right.
Remember? Did you trust Glenn at that time?
I trusted all the people that were close to me.
And up to that time, you trusted him?
He was a friend of mine, yes.
Did you reveal to him secrets about your family?
No.
Did you reveal to him that you and your brother had killed your parents?
No.
Did you reveal to him the fact that Dr. Oziel had made tapes of your confession?
No.
Or your conversations regarding this?
No.
So, in spite of the fact that you trusted him, you didn't tell him all of your secrets. Is that correct?
No.
Yes, that is correct, or no, it's not correct.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And you hadn't told anyone that you had killed your parents, with the exception of Dr. Oziel. Is that correct?
Right.
And would you have voluntarily told Dr. Oziel that information?
No.
Did you later find out additional information about Mr. Stevens which affected whether you trusted him or not?
Yes.
And did you find out information? Was Mr. Stevens running the restaurant for you when you first went to jail? Or working at your restaurant?
He was working there, yes.
And did you find out some information about Mr. Stevens and what he was doing at the restaurant that affected whether you trusted him?
Yes.
What did you find out?
That he was stealing.
You were asked about a limousine and losing your license. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Did your dad always travel in limousines?
Well, not everywhere he went, but there was in Pennington for a few years, it was limousines everywhere he went.
Was there any?
But then normally it would just be limousines if he felt like he didn't want to drive.
Was there a period of time in which he was using limousines because of some license problems he had?
Oh.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
And when was that?
In Pennington, he lost his license, I believe, for 2 years. So he traveled. But for that reason, the company let him drive limousines everywhere.
And when you had the discussion with your Aunt Terry about a limousine, was this because of not having a driver, or the idea that you wouldn't have a driver's license?
Yes, she and I talked about my problems with the license. And essentially, I was relying on my Aunt Terry for a lot of advice on things. And she had known about what my dad had done to solve his license problems and get his license back in order. And so we discussed that. And then I just decided not to do that, basically because one of my uncles had said he thought it was a bad idea.
You were asked some questions about your interest in a restaurant.
Right.
And you said that your dad had talked about buying a fast food restaurant
Yes.
earlier in time. Do you remember what restaurant that was?
Burger King.
And do you remember who it was he was going to buy it with? Or who the discussions were with?
Do you have any memory?
Well, they were with me, and other relatives knew about it.
Okay. And did restaurants interest you?
Yes.
Did you kill your parents so that you could buy a restaurant?
No.
I have nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. Menendez, your father worked for the money that was used to pay for the limousines, is that correct?
Yes.
And your father did not have any inherited wealth, is that correct?
None.
Thank them, that's correct.
All right, let's get the other jury out, please.
All right. So that was a little bit about Glenn Stevens,
Let's get the other
feeling
jury out.
from him.
Yeah. All right, we have both juries back in court, and we had hoped to go on with the next witness with both juries before the noon hour, but it's already 1:45, and we wouldn't be able to get very far along. So rather than start now, I'll let.
All right. So I'm going to pause it there, and we are going to skip on ahead to the other testimony that we've got for us here. Okay. All right. So this is a 3 hour and 44-minute segment. We're not going to get through all of it today. We're going to get through about an hour and a half of it. Yeah. So let me get some questions here first. Sophie 1518, this is more of a comment than a question, but I saved it because it's an interesting point. Sophie says, I'm shocked that according to Hazel Thornton's book, there were more people on Erik's jury in favor of guilty of first-degree murder than Lyle's. And actually, I'm going to do this. Interesting. Not having seen Erik's testimony in full substance, I'm wondering if there's some way that he came across that just seemed less trustworthy, or he didn't vibe as well as Lyle did. I mean, based on the way in which they grew up, that wouldn't fully surprise me, because Lyle was the one who was given all the attention and all of the importance and everything, so he probably had a lot more confidence than Erik did. Also, Erik was just abused in all of the ways much longer than Lyle was. So interesting, but this is an interesting point to keep in mind. And then also Sophie 1518 says, what are your overall thoughts? What are your overall thoughts about what the Lyle's defense and the prosecution did right and wrong, and what you think they should have focused on? I mean, I really think that the cross-examination just had so much fluff that it's really, really easy to get lost in the weeds of the cross-examination. Like, what we're left with is this whole thing about the Billionaire Boys Club. It takes a lot of attention because it's such a strange thing to focus in on. So it's like, it's one of these things. It's like, why are we talking about this? Is this important? I wonder why. All of those questions lead someone to focus very much on it. But if there's no satisfying, if there's no satisfying answer that becomes clear, because I can check imdb.com for what the Billionaire Boys Club is, but they could not in 1993, partly because did most homes have internet at that point? I don't think so. Probably not. But also, even if they were, jurors are not allowed to do any sort of independent research. And Indy is allowed to be absolutely adorable. You can tell she's very relaxed. Yeah. So having too many of those like strange things that are very unique is a bad thing, because it's going to draw the attention away from these more critical, more important issues, and then cause someone to just focus in on like, why? What is this? What is its significance? Anyhow, that's really the big thing here for me. I think with Lyle's direct examination, I think that Jill Lansing did a great job of letting him talk, letting him tell his story. I think he was very nervous in the beginning, and she did a very good job of giving a very sort of like calming presence for him so that he could relax a bit and kind of just sort of get into the groove, so that by the time he was on cross-examination, he seemed like he had already been like very comfortable in that role. So yeah. But what could they have improved on? I think I would have liked the redirect to really land on their mental state in the days before. But but this actually gets to another question here. How many re's can there be? Talking about redirect, recross, redirect, recross, all of these things. It depends on the courtroom. So some judges will say, hey, we're gonna allow for direct, cross, redirect, one recross, one redirect, that's it, or maybe even less. But like, some judges will have certain rules on that. Others will say, take, you have certain number of minutes, you get to choose how you use up those minutes, in the courtroom. We saw that with the Depp case, right? They were allowed to put on their cases the way that they saw fit. They had a certain number of minutes. Judge was consistently reminding them how much time they had left throughout the entire trial to make sure that they were able to track it. And so, sometimes they'll give more of that. And basically what they'll say is like, you use up the minutes that you use up. Now, there is an important piece about cross-examination, redirect, recross, redirect, all of these things, is that each time that you get further and further away from the direct examination, the scope gets narrower and narrower and narrower. It's like, it's like an iceberg underneath the water, right? It's each level gets smaller and smaller because the cross-examination is supposed to be within the scope of direct examination. Your redirect is, and there's some flexibility on cross-examination because of the fact that there is, you also have other, counter arguments that you're probably trying to make, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to redirect and beyond, the rules get a bit more strict that, that the scope of information that you're allowed to go into has to have been encompassed in the prior level. So like they focused in on a certain issue and you want to be able to respond to it. And then they want to be able to respond to the thing that you did that's like within that scope, getting narrower and narrower until there's basically nothing left to talk about. So I hope that explains that. And let's see here. Oh, and then also, this is an interesting point. Sophie 1518. Lyle jury's final vote for Jose. 3 said murder in first degree, 3 said murder in second degree, 6 said voluntary manslaughter. Kitty, for Kitty's death, it was 3 in the first degree, 3 in the second degree, 5 for voluntary, 1 for involuntary manslaughter. Interesting that they said involuntary, that there was one person who thought involuntary manslaughter for Kitty, probably because of the fact that, he said when we got in there, it was super dark. We were just shooting, we were just shooting. And so, no, it probably is not because of that. It would have to be that he had here's what it is. Here's what it is. Probably the reason why that one person said involuntary manslaughter for Kitty is because of the fact that they probably thought it was much more reasonable to believe that Kitty would do something to harm the two of them in the immediate future because of the fact that she had been so depressed. She had written suicide notes. She had talked about taking everyone else with her. The fact that Jose was even worried about that beforehand, that probably is the reason why that one person said involuntary manslaughter, which is an interesting perspective. It's very interesting that they seem to have hooked in on that. So yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. I think that probably had quite a bit of a role to play in that that little divergence there. Okay, Divine and Hale with Donna Clifford says question, how did the dad make all his money? He made it through, I mean, he had been a major executive at RCA Records. So that's where the whole the thing about Menudo, right? There's been this thing that came out, Roy Rosselló from Menudo, the boy band. He came out and said that Jose Menendez had abused him. It's because he was in such a powerful executive position by that point in his career that he was able to call a lot of shots, apparently. And that included, doing terrible things to young boys, apparently. So yeah, that's the main way that he made his money. Okay. All right. I think that's everything. All right, let's get started with let me see, is this going to work? Did I already do it? I think I did. Yes, I did. Okay. All right, let's get started with the next bit of testimony.
Leslie H. Zoeller, Zoeller.
Detective Zoeller, you've previously identified yourself as the investigating officer for the Beverly Hills Police Department in this case. Is that correct?
That's correct.
A number of photographs of various rooms and parts of the residence at 722 Elm Drive have been introduced in this court. Are you familiar with those photographs?
Yes, I am.
And is it usual procedure in a homicide investigation for photographs to be taken of the scene?
Yes.
And as the investigating officer on, I guess, the early morning hours of August 21st, 1989, were you aware of the fact that a large number of photographs were taken of the interior of the house?
Yes, I am.
If I may approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
I'm holding a previously marked exhibit 63. It's small. Do you recognize that photograph to be a photograph taken inside the master bedroom at 722 Elm Drive?
Yes.
And does that particular photograph show the location of the IBM PC computer that was in that room?
Yes, it does.
And does that photograph show that the computer and its stand is to the right of the entry doors to the bedroom?
Yes.
And it is up against a wall, is it not?
That's correct.
I have. Now, I've placed a series, may I stay, Your Honor, just to go through these photographs?
Yes.
I've placed a series of photographs in front of you that have been marked with new numbers 257 through 265. Let me ask you about them one at a time. Showing you 257. Do you recognize what room of the residence that photograph was taken in?
Yes, I do.
And what room was it?
This is Erik's room, and it was a room upstairs on the south side of the residence toward the front. There was a guest bedroom further west than this at the front of the house.
Okay. So it's not right on the front. Its windows don't open to the front of the house.
That's correct.
Do you know what its windows open to?
To the south side of the house.
And do you know if those windows overlook the pool area, the tennis court area, and provide a view of the guest house?
It does not, no.
Does not provide a view of those things?
No.
Now, the items and objects that are in this particular photograph, to the best of your understanding, were they in that condition when your photographer arrived to photograph them?
Yes.
Is it proper police procedure to not move items around at a crime scene?
Yes, it is.
And was the entire house, under your guidance, treated as a crime scene?
Yes.
so that nothing should have been moved in any room?
That's correct.
And would the same be true of putting things in rooms that were not there when the police arrived?
That is also correct.
No one should be doing that.
No.
And do you have any reason whatsoever to believe that anyone working on this investigation on the 21st of August, 1989, put anything in any of these rooms that was not already there?
To my knowledge, nobody had done that.
Showing you the next photograph, which I previously marked 258. Is that another view of Erik's bedroom?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's pretty messy.
In your opinion, does it appear messy?
Yes.
When you observed it the morning of August 21st, were you struck with its messiness?
Yes.
Were there various writings like papers, magazines, books strewn about the room?
Yes, there were.
Did you note any particular writing in any police report or inventory or property report?
No.
Did you collect any items from that room?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And did you inventory the contents of each and every one of these rooms?
No.
They didn't really know what was there, what wasn't
Showing you
there.
the next photograph, which has been marked 259. What room of the house does that?
Yeah. Okay. So in cross-examination, Pam Bozanich was kind of making a deal for a little bit about, Lyle taking some things, separating things out and putting them in boxes and taking them out, like as if this is some major issue. But here we have the police saying, we didn't know what was in this house. We had no idea, even though we considered all of this to be a crime scene, the entire house, and we took photos of the house and all this kind of stuff. But no, no one inventoried it. So, okay, interesting. Let's see where this goes.
That appeared to be.
This is another photo of the master bedroom.
And do you see there appears to be a piece of equipment in the center of the photograph that has a jacket over it? Do you know what that equipment was?
I believe it was a life cycle.
An exercise bike?
Yes.
And there is a doorway beyond that piece of equipment. Do you know where it went?
That went to the dressing rooms.
Were there two separate dressing rooms and bathrooms off this master bedroom?
Yes.
And was access to both of them through this doorway, or was there another doorway?
I believe it was just through this doorway.
And was one of the dressing room, bathroom areas to the left of that doorway and the other to the right?
Yes.
Now, when you say dressing room, did that include closets?
Yes.
Let me take this out of here and put it up. You recall testifying earlier that there were two rifles in a closet off the master bedroom.
That's correct.
And could you determine in looking at the clothing in each of those dressing rooms, which was Mr. Menendez's and which was Mrs. Menendez's?
I believe so, yes.
Was there female clothing, for example, in one
Yes.
and male clothing in the other?
Yes.
Do you recall in which closet the rifles were?
I believe they were in Mr. Menendez's closet.
Now, along those lines, did you see either in the bedroom or in Mr. Menendez's closet a wooden box or a wooden tray-like thing, the sort where men put their wallets and keys at the end of the night, men who don't carry purses?
I don't recall.
You have testified that the rifles were not loaded.
That's correct.
Did you ever examine the premises or search for ammunition for that rifle?
Yes,
And you didn't find any?
that's correct.
I'm sorry, I'll show this to you first. This is 260. Is that the same bedroom?
Yes.
And do you notice whether or not in that photograph there is a window seat?
Yes.
And on the sides of the window seat recessed,
Thank you, Care Bear.
can you tell if there's anything there?
It appears to be a bookcase with what appears to be books.
Do they appear to be books, or do they also appear to be magazines?
It's hard to tell. It could possibly be magazines.
I take it you did not inventory those magazines,
That's correct.
nor did you remove any from the house.
That's correct.
Now, showing you the next photograph, which is 261, does that appear to be a second window seat in the same bedroom?
Yes.
And does there appear to be bookcases recessed on the sides of that window seat?
Yes, there are.
I'm going to put these photographs up sort of overlapping. Is this sort of the way that part of the room looked? The two window seats and bookcases on either side of the fireplace.
Yes.
Now, I would like to call your attention, Detective Zoeller, perhaps I'll tilt this a tiny bit, to photograph, I believe this is 250. Not being contradicted. You have previously testified that this item here was a glass of some sort that was on the coffee table in the den.
That's correct.
And it appears to have some white substance around the sides and some darker spots. Correct?
That's correct.
Was there any actual food inside the glass?
No.
It was basically just traces of food.
That's correct.
And did you, in examining that glass, determine, or at least form an opinion, as to what those traces were?
Yes.
And were those traces of blueberries?
Yes.
And was the white stuff traces of whipped cream?
Yes.
And was there only one such glass on the coffee table when you observed it?
Containing that material, yes.
Okay. And it didn't have, it was intact, it wasn't broken,
That's correct.
wasn't picked off off the floor and put there.
That's correct.
At least you hope and pray it wasn't.
Not by any of my people, anyway.
Okay. And it doesn't appear to have any evidentiary value, does it? I mean, it wasn't seized, it wasn't tested in any way.
That's correct.
Doesn't appear to have blood on it.
No.
Now I want to show you photograph 262. Do you recognize what room of the house that's in?
It's a photo of the,
I don't know why, but every time he turns, I hear the creaking of his chair, and it's like, I don't know why, but my brain just wants to hyper focus on it. Are you guys noticing that, or is it just me? And will you now notice it now that I've just said that? Sorry.
kitchen.
Now, did you, in your inspection of this crime scene, come upon a second glass that also appeared to have the traces of blueberries and whipped cream in it?
Yes.
And where was that glass?
Sitting on the counter in the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
And it's depicted in photo 262.
Could you just, this isn't a grease pencil, but could you just circle that second glass with similar traces?
I've done that.
Thank you. And showing you 263, is that also a photograph of the kitchen?
It is.
Is it taken from the opposite end of the island?
It is.
And do you see the same glass in that photograph?
Yes, I do.
And would you circle it again?
I've done that.
And was this glass also entirely intact?
Yes, it was.
And did this glass also not have any blood or anything
No, I
else of
can't remember
evidentiary
saying that.
significance on it?
It did not.
Now, have
Static,
you
static.
ever reviewed these photographs, 250 and the two that I've shown you, with Mrs. Bozana?
I'm sure I have, yes.
Have you ever focused on this weakness Bozana into believing that there was actually berries and cream, two such containers in the bin at the time the police arrived at the location? Would you look at the last photograph that's in front of you?
There are two photographs here.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay, go through it.
264.
And what does 264 show?
It's an exterior shot, a close-up of the French doors outside the den, depicting a broken glass pane.
And does that appear to be a relatively large hole?
Yes.
Let me put this up. And the last photograph?
Last photograph is again from the outside of that den, and it is a photo depicting a second hole in a French door window.
That's a different hole, correct?
That's correct.
Also, Andy saying that he looks like Mr. Rooney. I can 100% see it. Mr. Rooney, I'm assuming you mean from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That is hilarious. I hadn't thought about it before, but now I also can't unsee it. So thank you. Thank you, Andy.
Getting back for a moment to your inspection of the scene, and particularly the area of the master bedroom and the closets, did you see any currency of any type, whether domestic or foreign, anywhere in that area?
Yes.
And what did you see?
I recall seeing American bills.
Do you recall seeing any foreign currency, bills, coins, anything like that?
I don't recall.
Did you locate Mrs. Menendez's purse anywhere in the house?
It was in that dressing room.
In which one?
In the one as soon as you went into that room, so the first dressing room.
Do you recall what color it was, the dressing room?
No, I don't.
And did you find Mr. Menendez's wallet?
I believe I did see it.
Where?
I don't recall.
Wasn't it inside his dressing room on a wooden tray?
Also, sorry, I just realized that was originally the other Andrew Farrell, who mentioned that about Ferris Bueller, and then I only saw my brother Andy's comment about Mr. Rooney. Sorry. Credit to the person in the chat that actually said it. Sorry.
It could have been. I just don't recall.
And didn't that same wooden tray have numerous English coins and bills on it?
I don't recall.
And didn't that same tray also have about 20 rounds of .22 caliber ammunition?
I don't recall seeing that, no.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any examination on behalf of Lyle Menendez? Any cross-examination? All right, thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So now we've got Erik. We are finally on to Erik's testimony here. So that was interesting. I mean, they brought him in basically to talk about the positioning of these the various things in the room, all of the other rooms, basically to show that they're, they didn't inventory everything. Also, this thing about the ice cream and blueberries that the prosecution made such a big deal about. They were not in the middle of eating ice cream and blueberries when they were shot, right? Because otherwise, in order to show that empty glass, someone would have had to sit there and eat it after the parents got shot, right? Lyle and Erik didn't testify to eating any of that. And the police said, Detective Zoeller said, nope, we're not allowed to move anything. So like, what did the cops come in and eat the ice cream? That is to poke some holes in the prosecution's case, basically saying that the parents were sitting there, not being threatening to anyone, just sitting there on a normal night, eating ice cream and blueberries, or in the middle of a meal, essentially, when the guys burst in and shot them. So it's to call into question the assertions by the prosecution. That's what that was all about. All right.
Yes, I do.
Now on to Erik.
Erik Galen Menendez, Menendez.
Mr. Menendez, you've been in this courtroom since the beginning of pretrial hearings and trial, have you not?
Yes, I have.
Are you aware of the idiosyncrasies of that microphone? If you get too close, it pops. You know that?
Yes.
If
yes.
you get too far away, we don't hear you.
That's right.
Okay. So would you put yourself at a middle distance? If you can. I think you should come in a little closer.
Okay, I'm fine.
Okay?
All right, so just for the purposes of 90s bingo, today we've got mustache, we've got paisley, we've got, I don't think I've seen any shoulder pads so far, but I wasn't looking for it. So if anybody sees shoulder pads, point it out, just for a little bit of levity, because I know that what we are about to get into is going to be tough. So trigger warning for everyone once again. If we're going to get into some heavy topics with this direct examination, yes, we're going to get into some sensitive topics. So if any of this starts to become difficult for you, do what you need to do for your mental health, and be forewarned that we are going to be getting into it. Okay, let's continue on.
All right. Mr. Menendez, where do you live?
Los Angeles County Jail.
And how long have you lived there?
3.5 years.
And during the 3.5 years that you have lived there, on how many occasions have you been in sunshine?
10 times.
Overruled.
10 times?
10 times.
And for how long a period on each of those times?
45 minutes.
What's the last time you were in sunshine?
4, 5, 6 months ago.
Is that why you're so pale?
Probably.
You're not sick.
No.
You don't have any skin diseases.
No.
His skin looks actually pretty flawless.
Do you know who Dr. William Vickery is?
Yes. Yes, I do.
And how long have you known him?
Over 3 years, 3.5 years.
And what is he by profession?
He's a psychiatrist.
And is he someone that you've seen regularly while in the jail?
Yes, he's my psychiatrist.
He's your psychiatrist?
Yes.
I think you better come a tiny bit closer. Thank you.
Oh man, somebody tells me he's going to struggle with this mic.
Does Dr. Vickery have you under a prescription for some medication currently?
Yes.
And what is the name of the medication?
Xanax.
And what is your understanding of what it's
Anxiety.
Overruled.
For so that I can sleep and for my nerves.
Yeah.
for? Are you a nervous person?
Sometimes.
So the reason why it's smart that she's getting into these like right off the bat, because it seems kind of weird that she was asking about him being in the sun and him being pale and all this kind of stuff. I think that what they are anticipating is the jury is going to start asking questions kind of early on about his appearance and the way that he's coming off and all these kind of things. Like there's something that might be kind of off about him. So they, what they're doing is they're jumping ahead of it to be like, okay, we're going to supply you with a little bit of information about why he might not be looking a little bit normal. He hasn't seen the sun in however many months. And so he's quite pale. And so he's not sick. He's not, there's nothing wrong with him physically in terms of like his skin. So, don't take that as some sort of evidence that he's like, lying because he's so pallid or something. Two, he's been prescribed, he's seeing a psychiatrist and he's been prescribed Xanax. And so therefore there might be some aspects of the way that he talks about some of this stuff that might be a little bit different from you and I, because it could be the medication. There could be aspects of this medication that might impact the way that he comes across. So it is, it's something that is relevant because this is, the jury is always going to be analyzing each witness on their testimony and the way that they come across, the way that they present to the jury. And so that's the kind of thing that is still relevant, even if it seems like random, so yeah. Okay. Let's continue on. This is very interesting that this is what they're starting with.
And how often are you supposed to take the Xanax?
Twice a day.
And are you supposed to take it at night for sleep?
Yes.
Did you take it last night?
Yes.
Did you take it the night before?
The night before, yes.
Now, are you also supposed to take it during the day?
Yes, I am.
Have you not taken it today?
No, I haven't.
And are you planning on taking it during the day so long as you testify?
Yes.
You are?
I'm planning on it, yes.
Do you know if you will?
No.
Do you have some concerns about taking it while you're testifying?
Yes.
And why don't you tell us what those concerns are?
I've been told that when you take Xanax,
Let me ask you something. Does it make you sleepy?
yes,
Are you reluctant to take it when you need to be awake?
yes,
Were you aware of the fact?
So that's why that's the real reason why here is because he's a very anxious person, a very nervous person, and he's been prescribed this thing, but he so far today has not taken it. He says he plans to, but he hasn't really decided about whether he's going to throughout the testimony moving forward. That might be impacted based on how today goes, I would imagine. But so far, he is not, he has not taken any today, which means he might come across as particularly anxious or nervous, which could impact the way that the jury views his testimony. Okay.
Fact, Mr. Menendez, that in 1987, 1988, and 1989, your mother took Xanax?
yes.
Do you know what the dosage is, what the size of the pill is of the Xanax that you're supposed to take?
Yes.
What is it?
0.25?
0.25 milligram?
Yeah.
A quarter of a milligram?
Yes.
And that makes you sleepy?
Yes.
Yeah. So obviously he doesn't want to fall asleep on the stand.
Did you, strike that. How long, strike that. What's the first day that you resided in the Los Angeles County Jail?
March 11th, or the night of the 10th, or the 11th, 1990.
And was that the day that you were arrested?
Yes.
And where were you arrested?
At the LA airport.
Los Angeles International Airport?
Yes.
And did Detective Zoeller arrest you there?
Yes, he did.
And how did you come to be at Los Angeles International Airport?
I flew in from Miami and London.
And where had you started out on that journey?
I was in Israel playing tennis.
And was your coach, Mark Heffernan, in Israel with you?
Yes, he was.
And did you fly from Israel to someplace and then stop?
I flew from Israel to London.
And then from London to,
Miami,
and from Miami to.
LA.
Now, did something happen? Did you hear something in Israel that caused you to make that flight?
Yes, I did.
And what had you heard?
My roommate called me and told me that my brother had been arrested.
And your roommate's name was?
Noel Nedley.
And was Noel Nedley a man?
Yes.
And did Noel tell you, or did you understand what your brother was arrested for?
I think he told me. Yeah.
You knew it was for killing your parents.
Yes.
And when you learned that did you know your brother was charged or being charged or held on a murder charge?
Well, I assumed. I mean, I knew it was for the killing of my parents,
So you knew the charge would be murder?
Yes.
Did you learn before you left Israel that allegations had been filed against your brother of special circumstances that made it a potential death penalty case?
Yes. No, I'm not sure I knew that before I left Israel, but I knew that in London.
You knew at least that was the potential charges?
Oh, yes. Yes, I knew that.
And how soon after hearing that your brother was arrested did you decide to leave Israel and come back to the United States?
Immediately.
And did you expect that when you came back, you would also be arrested?
Yes.
Did you understand there was a warrant out for your arrest?
Yes, I did.
And did you understand you'd be arrested for the same thing your brother was being held on?
Yes.
Did you ever consider during that period of time running away?
No.
Did you consider hiding?
No.
Did you consider fighting extradition from either Israel or England?
No, I didn't want to fight extradition
Why?
because I wanted to be back with my brother.
Why?
Objection irrelevant. Sustained.
Mr. Menendez, you've heard the testimony of your brother that you and he killed your parents on August 20th, 1989. Did you not?
Yes, we did.
And what do you believe was the originating cause of you and your brother ultimately winding up shooting your parents?
Me telling.
You telling what?
Me telling Lyle that
You telling Lyle what?
Oh boy.
Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
my dad.
Oh.
Okay.
My dad.
Your Honor, can I ask a leading question?
If you don't ask.
My dad.
He's
Wait 1 second, Mr.
trying to get it
Menendez.
out.
No, he was in the process of answering, so there's no need to ask it.
Can you answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, it was you telling Lyle what?
My dad had been molesting me.
And
Oh.
did you want?
So he says, so the question, by the way, was, what was the immediate cause for you guys killing your parents? And he said, it was because I told Lyle about my dad molesting me. So and you can tell with how much he struggled to get that answer out, that he felt all of that pain, all of that guilt, all of that weight as to he feels like he's the reason why they're there. I mean, it also makes sense why he just said, I wasn't going to fight extradition to come back. I wanted to be with my brother. He probably feels like Lyle is in this position because of him. Because he's like, if I could have just kept my damn mouth shut, none of this would have happened. if I had not told Lyle about any of it, if I had just bucked up and continued on, then none of this would have happened. And that is so much for one person to hold. And that it's like, that's more weight for someone to hold than they should. He should not be holding that he does not need to hold that. And hopefully by this point in 2023, as we're watching this, hopefully he has worked through with a lot of therapy and gotten to a place that he no longer feels all of that guilt. But that is just like, oh my God, what a way to start this direct examination. Oh, it's so sad. It's so tragic.
Want something from your brother? Is that why you told him?
I wanted to stop.
Were you seeking help from your brother?
Yes.
And when you were in Israel in 1990, did you feel that seeking help from your brother was why your brother was in jail?
Yes.
Oh my God.
In the summer of 1989, Mr. Menendez, did you live with your parents, Jose and Mary Louise Menendez?
Yes, I did.
And how old were you?
I was 18 years old.
And had you always lived with your parents your whole life?
Yes.
You had never been sent away to school, boarding school, or anything like that?
No.
Had you on a couple of occasions gone away to camp for a week at a time?
Yes.
Other than that, did you always live with your folks?
Yes, I did.
And in fact, as of that summer of 1989, had you taken all of your vacations with your parents?
Yes.
Had you ever been an exchange student or studied away from the city in which they lived?
No.
During the years 1986, 1987, 1988, were you aware of the fact that your mother was in a noticeable emotional state a lot?
Yes.
Were you aware of the fact that your mother took medication?
Overruled as to that question.
Yeah, I knew she took medication.
Did you see her doing that?
Yes.
What was the form of the medication that she took? Was it a liquid? Was it pills?
It was pills.
During the summer of 1989, did that change?
Yes.
Did you see your mother taking her medication during that summer, or did you notice that she wasn't?
No, she had stopped taking it.
And had, at the same time that you realized it stopped taking the medication, did you see any increase in her very emotional states?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, during the summer of 1989, were you being sexually molested by your father?
Yes.
And when did that begin? How old were you?
I was 6 years old.
Now, you have seen a series of photographs that we put up on the board some weeks ago. Series is 223, 230. He's in front of you for a moment. Why don't you look through those and tell me if you remember seeing those when they were last put up in this trial?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Except,
Are those pictures of your 6th birthday party?
yes.
Other scenes of that day?
Yes.
Oh, right.
Now, do you know?
So if these are the photos that I think they are, remember previously in another episode, there were certain photos that were introduced by the defense that were on a family photo roll. There were like photos from a birthday party, and then there were some very, very, very explicit photos. If anybody in the chat that has already seen the trial can tell me if those explicit photos are going to be shown again, if he has to identify himself in those photos, please let me know, because I don't want to be showing those on here. Otherwise, I'm going to be pre-screening these photos as they're being put up, so that it's not worth getting a strike on this YouTube channel. So, folks that want to see the full trial, Court TV's website has everything. Okay. So I will be monitoring. Yeah, I'll be monitoring just to make sure so that they are pre-screened.
No. Can you remember whether or not the molestation began before or after your 6th birthday party?
I was right around then. I believe it was just after.
Excuse me?
I believe it was just after.
After.
Mm-hmm.
And where were you living at the time?
Muncie.
You've seen the chart that we have used to identify the houses?
Yes.
You recognize the Muncie house from that chart?
Yes.
And was that house in quite a wooded area?
Yes, it was.
Just in case. Yeah, glad I did. So look at Indy instead.
Can you say, Mr. Menendez, that you
Okay, so this part is not. Okay, just in case.
Can you say that you actually remember your 6th birthday party?
Yeah, I'm just going to show Indy for a minute.
You don't?
I remember a birthday party, but I mean.
But you don't know if you remember that one?
No.
Okay, now scanning back to him. Okay, we're good.
They're stuck together. Excuse me. There's a photograph. Mr. Menendez, do you recall seeing a photograph in this series of your body naked?
Yes.
Do you remember that photograph being taken?
I remember a lot of photographs being taken, and I don't remember that specific one.
Oh, geez.
The types of photographs, well, your parents both took a lot of photographs of you and your brother, is that right?
Yes.
Do you remember naked photographs being taken?
Yes.
And who would take the naked ones?
My dad.
God.
But you don't remember that specific one being taken?
No.
Do you recall when it was that you first saw or shown that naked photograph of yourself?
Just before I got to court.
Was while you've been in jail?
Yes.
How long, from the time you were 6, when you say your father started to molest you, how long did that go on?
12 years.
12 years.
And were there episodes of sexual activity with your father over that last summer?
Yes.
Over the course of the 12 years, did the type of sexual activity that your father engaged in with you vary and change?
Yes.
Were there patterns to the behavior so that there were actually different kinds of sexual incidents with your father?
Objection, leading.
Overall.
Yes.
And did you come over the years to give those different kinds of sexual incidents names?
Yes.
And would you tell us what were the names that you gave to those different types of incidents?
Knees.
Knees,
Knees.
Knees.
Yes.
Oh, God.
That was one type.
Yes.
What was another type?
Nice sex. Nice sex.
Nice sex. What was another kind?
Rough sex.
Rough sex.
Oh, my God.
And was there another kind still?
Oh.
Yes.
And what name did you come to give that kind?
Just sex.
You called that sex.
Yes.
And was that you called sex some form of intercourse?
Yes.
When before your father died was the last incident of what you called sex?
In May
Of what year?
1989.
And when before your father died was the last incident of knees?
In August
Of what year?
1989.
And that last incident of knees took place in what location?
My bedroom.
The bedroom that Detective Zoeller was just identifying photographs of?
Yes.
Over the course of those 12 years between age 6 and age 18, where did most of the sexual incidents with your father take place?
In my bedroom.
Starting at which house?
In Muncie.
And did episodes of sexual activity between yourself and your father also take place in the next house you lived in on Mill Road?
Yes.
And did similar incidents occur when you lived in the house in Pennington on Lakeshore Drive?
Yes.
And were there incidents in the fancy house on Mountain Avenue in Princeton?
Yes.
And were there incidents in the rented house in Calabasas?
Yes.
And were there incidents in the big mansion in Beverly Hills?
Yes.
Let me just put this other picture. This is the, I'm just going to show it to you. This is the naked picture of you that you were testifying about.
Yes.
Does it embarrass you, this picture?
Yes.
Yeah, it
What
definitely
exhibit
does.
number was that?
Your Honor, that one is 232.
Holy crap. Like, Jesus, notice how he didn't even want to look at it. He was like, his body language was leaning away from it. He's you know, he's got his head angled down. Oh, God, this is so painful for him. So painful. By the way, Fun Times member for 16 months. Thank you so much for being a member for 16 whole months. Says, hi, everyone. It's been so long since I've been live. Usually replay crew lately. Well, wonderful to have you here. And I'm sorry that it's such a difficult part of the testimony because it really feels very painful, but very happy to have you here with us. Yeah, his body language right now, along with his breathing and his expressions, like everything fits with the emotional pain that, it all fits with his words. It's bad. It's so bad. Yeah. But I mean, everything rings very sincere to me.
The summer of 1989, Mr. Menendez, what did you do for the bulk of that summer?
I played tennis.
You played tennis?
Yes,
Did you play tennis at home or were you traveling?
I was traveling.
And you were traveling to what?
Tennis tournaments.
And were these tennis?
You can tell that also he's having a hard time getting the words out because there's just so much that he's feeling right now. Oh man, I feel so horribly for him.
Tournaments in different places?
Yeah, they were in San Francisco. They were in Kentucky and Michigan.
And was this series of tournaments part of the junior national competition that occurs every year?
Yes.
And what is the last place that the junior nationals is played every year?
In Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Also, just a quick point, Muir Maiden, thank you for pointing this out. Erik has auditory processing disorder, which is why Leslie is being so crisp in her questioning. She has to make sure that he hears, understands, and that his mind doesn't wander. I was actually thinking about the fact that her questioning for me is this has me wondering, do I have auditory processing disorder? I mean, I know that I have issues with processing information, like, verbally as opposed to like seeing it on paper. But like this has me wondering because, I was totally thinking the way that she's asking these questions is just so great for really paying attention. I'm having a much easier time personally paying attention to her words. And it's just because of like her delivery. But that's a very, very interesting point. Okay. All right. Thank you for pointing that out.
When did you start traveling to these tournaments that summer?
July.
And the first place was?
In San Francisco.
And did you stay in a hotel with your parents during that part of the tournament?
Yes.
And do you remember what town or area that hotel was in?
I believe it was in Burlingame.
Burlingame, California?
Yes.
Also, this is another really good point here. Reximoto, his emotions don't just fall off or change when the questioning gets more benign. Yes. This is something that I know Spidey from behavioral arts has pointed out before, that when somebody is feeling negative emotions, like truly feeling like as in fact feeling negative emotions, it has a way of trailing out of them when the conversation turns to something that is much less painful. Somebody who isn't actually feeling negative emotions but is faking it is able to just kind of snap out of it and be like, oh, happy, happy, happy. No, because your brain is still kind of focused on like that negative memory, that negative feeling. from the prior conversation. It kind of like bleeds out until it finally dissipates and goes away. So that's a really, really good point here too. I mean, he's still like, you can tell just watching him as she turns to the next question and it's on something else, he's still thinking about it. He's still like, his brain is still in there. And it's just like, he's having to sort of like look back up and then kind of like focus. Okay. Like it's sort of draining out of him. Very interesting.
Now let's turn to the last part of this travel in Kalamazoo. What month was the play in Kalamazoo? The tournament in Kalamazoo, the end of the Nationals.
It was in August.
Now, how were you doing that summer, tennis-wise, in the tournament?
In which tournament?
Well, let's start with, how'd you do in San Francisco?
I did pretty well in San Francisco.
And the next stop was Kentucky?
Yes.
What city?
Louisville?
Louisville, Kentucky?
Louisville.
How'd you do at Louisville?
I did great at Louisville.
And after you did great at Louisville, did you sense what your parents' expectations were for the next round?
Yes.
And what did you sense about their expectations for the next round?
They wanted me to win Kalamazoo.
And what does winning Kalamazoo mean?
Winning, it was called the National Tournament, and it was the biggest tournament of the year, every year. And when you won it, you got a berth into the U.S. Open.
But how many other tennis-playing teams were in that tournament? How many other kids were in it?
128. It was the top 128 kids in the country would compete in that tournament.
And going into the tournament, were those 128 already ranked based on their previous tennis play?
Yes.
And do you know what you were ranked going into Kalamazoo?
Not quite sure. I think I was ranked 44. I know that was my ended up ranking, somewhere around 40.
And when you say your parents expected you to win it, does that mean they expected you to go from 44 to 1?
Well, not necessarily go from 44 to 1 in the rankings, but win the tournament.
In other words, beat everybody and wind up the number one player in that tournament?
Yes.
Now, there was some youngster ranked 1, wasn't there?
Yes.
And 2.
Yes.
And all the way, there's 43 people ranked higher than you.
Yes.
Did you feel it was that you could do that? That you were going to win Kalamazoo?
No.
Why not?
Because I wasn't good enough to win Kalamazoo.
And did you say that to your parents? Now, don't expect me to win this. I'm not good enough.
No.
Why not?
Well, my dad and my mom wanted me to win Kalamazoo, so I told them I would play my hardest, and my dad said, no, you want to win it.
So you wouldn't say to him, Dad, that's not realistic?
No.
In fact, over the course of your entire life, did you feel that your parents had expectations for you?
Yes.
And did you ever feel those expectations were perhaps too high?
Yes.
And did you ever tell them, I can't do what you want me to do?
No, I don't remember saying that. I wouldn't have.
You wouldn't have?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Did you play hard at Kalamazoo?
Yes.
Did you train in addition to the actual matches? Were you on the tennis court playing and training in between?
In the morning and at night, before and after the match.
And was the weather particularly difficult during that tournament?
Yeah.
What was it like?
There was a heat wave going through, and there was a heat wave when I was playing in Kentucky, and then continued over when I was in Michigan. It was pretty hot.
Did that make it difficult for you to play in Michigan?
Yes, it made it difficult for everyone to play.
Had you been training hard and working hard all summer?
Yes.
What kind of physical shape did you feel you were in Kalamazoo?
I by the time when I started the summer, I was in fantastic physical shape. But after having to play and train every day for 6 or 8 hours a day throughout the summer, until I got to Kentucky, I was in good shape. But when I was in Kentucky, I almost passed out on the court because it was too hot, and I played like 9 or 10 matches in a period of like 5 days, and so I was exhausted by the time I got to Kalamazoo. So I wasn't in the shape I wanted to be in when I got there.
How'd you do at Kalamazoo?
I did really bad. I did pretty badly.
And was there a reaction on the part of your father to the way you played Kalamazoo?
Yes.
And was this a reaction you had seen in the past, or was it different?
It was different.
Now, in the past, if you had lost a tournament, how would your father react?
He would get extremely angry and yell, sometimes hit me, or have some sort of sex with me.
Sex was a punishment?
Yes.
Was it always a punishment, or only when you were a teenager?
Only when I was a teenager.
Oh, God.
And
So, by the way, there was a question earlier about the travels, like why they were getting into travels. I think part of it. Oh, sorry. 1 second. Sorry, Mr. Bites is here. Mr. Bites, say hi to everyone. He just waved. Okay. There you go. So what was I just going to say? I got completely distracted and then derailed. Oh yeah, the question about the travel. So, it's to set up context for, I mean, obviously this is very serious stuff that they're talking about. It's very, very relevant, that there's this abuse that's happening in connection with all of that travel. There also was at one point with one of the aunts, there was some kind of talk of Kitty saying that she had wanted to go to South America, or I think it was like Argentina or something like that. At one point, right before the shootings happened. And there was a thing about like, did you not mean Kalamazoo or something like that? So there also has been this issue about travel happening right before the parents were killed, right before the defendants killed the parents. So there's a bit of that too. But this is just, oh God, sex is punishment. This is horrible. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that, because I saw a question about that.
did he have an angry reaction when you lost in Kalamazoo?
Yes.
How was it different than the previous angry reactions when you lost?
Well, I've never seen him not be able to speak. He got so angry, and his muscles tensed up and his face tensed up to such a degree that he could no longer talk.
And where were you when you saw this reaction of his?
I was in the car.
And the car going from where to where?
From the tennis court to my hotel.
And did you find that, what was your reaction to his getting so angry he couldn't even yell at you?
I was scared. I didn't know what he was going to do. I'd never seen that happen before.
I can't hear you.
I didn't know what he was going to do. I'd never seen that happen before. And what he was saying scared me.
What did he say that scared you?
He said that he was yelling and telling me how awful I'd played, and telling me that everything that I'd ever played for came down to this one tournament, which I failed, and that everything I had ever played in any match I'd ever practiced for was meaningless now, because this was the tournament. This was the tournament, and it was my last junior national tournament, and he was telling me that I failed, and to the point where he could no longer speak.
So that's what he said before he could no longer speak.
Yeah.
And did you think that there would be serious consequences to his anger?
Yes.
Did you know what they would be?
No.
Now, before this loss and his anger, was there a plan for you and your mother and your father to go somewhere from Kalamazoo together?
Yes.
And where were you all supposed to go?
We were supposed to go up to Canada to see my grandfather.
And that's your mother's?
My mom's father.
Was he ill?
He was dying of cancer.
And from what you could observe and what you heard, was your mother anxious to go see her dying father?
Yes.
And after you lost at Kalamazoo, was there some change in that plan?
Yes.
And what was the change?
My dad said that he and I were not going to Canada and that we were going back to California.
And how did your mother react to that?
Well, he told my mom that if she wanted to go, she'd go alone, and that I and he were going back to California, and there were no argument about it, no questions about it.
Now, your mother declined to go to Canada by herself, is that right?
Yeah, she said that she wasn't going to go if my dad wasn't going to go.
And therefore, were plane tickets for Los Angeles purchased for the three of you?
Yeah, I assume.
Did you all three return to Los Angeles on August 9th via United Airlines?
Yeah, I believe that was the date.
And when you got back to Los Angeles on that day, did you see your brother Lyle?
Yes.
And to the best of your knowledge, had he been in Los Angeles some time before you got back?
Yes.
Now, did you have some hope or dream or expectation over that summer of 1989 for some improvement in your life?
I had it for a lot longer than that.
But you had it that summer as well?
Yes.
And first of all, what was it that you wanted to improve in your life?
I wanted to end the sex with my dad.
And did you have some expectation of how that was going to happen?
Yes.
And what did you expect?
I was going to go to college.
And how was that going to end the sex with your dad?
I was going to get away from him, and I wasn't going to sleep at the house anymore.
Now, what college were you expecting to go to?
At that time, UCLA.
And where were you expecting to live when you went to UCLA?
On campus.
In
the dorm.
Just a regular, ordinary dorm?
Yeah.
Now, had you wanted to go farther away to college?
Yes.
Where had you wanted to go originally?
I wanted to go to Brown.
And where is Brown?
In Rhode Island.
Did you have any friends going to Brown?
Yeah. Andy Pierce was going to Brown, and we had made plans before to go to Brown together.
You and Andy Pierce?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
And did you apply to Brown?
Yes, I did.
Did you apply to a lot of schools?
Yeah, I applied to something like 13 or 15 schools.
And were you, did you go to Brown for an interview?
Yes.
And did you have contact with the tennis coach at Brown?
Yes.
Was it what role, if any, did you think tennis might play in your being accepted at Brown?
I thought I wasn't going to get into the college without tennis.
What does that mean?
Well, the Ivy Leagues don't have scholarships like UCLA does and the state schools. So they can't just get you in if you don't have the grade point average. And so I had to have a minimal grade point average to get into the school. And but if you have the minimal grade point average, you don't usually get into the school. So I had to have the coach's help, and he was going to get me into the school as long as I had that grade point average.
In other words, if you had just been applying as, someone who was totally non-athletic, the minimal grade point average would not get you in as compared to the other candidates for entry. Is that what you're saying?
No, the minimal grade point
Yes.
average, yes.
Okay. So you thought you needed to trade on your tennis skills to get into Brown.
Oh, well, I knew that.
And was there a point when the next step, if you were actually going to try to get accepted by Brown, the next step would have been taken when someone vetoed your plan to go to Brown? Someone said you couldn't go?
Oh, my dad said I couldn't go.
And that was after you had already applied and already started the process?
Yeah, well, it was after the coach called me and told me that he needed to confirm that if I got in, I would go. Because apparently they can get 2 players in or something like that, each coach of every sport, as long as they have the minimal grade point average. And he said, if I get you in, you got to promise me you'll go. And that's when I had to talk it over with my dad.
And he said,
He said, no.
Was there also some discussion in the family, which included your mother, about your going to the University of California at Berkeley?
Yes.
Had you been accepted by the University of California?
Amazingly so, yes.
More than one campus accepted you?
All the UC campuses accepted me.
And do you think tennis had anything to do with that?
I don't know, and that's what I'm amazed about, because I never talked to the coaches, and I didn't have the grade point average to get into them. I just assumed it was because I put down a Spanish name or something.
Well, have you seen any of the applications that your mother made out for you for college?
Yes.
Did she identify you as Hispanic on those applications?
Yes.
And indeed, you are in part, are you not?
Yes.
So was there conversation about you perhaps going to Berkeley?
My mom wanted me to go to Berkeley.
And did you have some sense of why your mom wanted you to go to Berkeley?
Yeah.
What was that?
She didn't want me around the house. She wanted me to go far away to Berkeley. She wanted me to go to Brown. But then once my dad said no, she wanted me to go to Berkeley.
Were you aware of the fact that your mother had some dreams that when you were gone to college, she could stay with your father all the time, travel with him all the time, never leave his side? Did you hear that sort of thing?
Yes.
All right, objection sustained as to the form of the question, calling for speculation, also leading and suggestive.
Did you hear your mother talking about what her expectations were after you went off to college?
Yeah, she was excited to get Lyle and I off to college and away from the house so that she could take trips with Dad and she wouldn't have to she didn't want Dad to go on business trips alone. And so she would be able to go with Dad to business trips and she'd just be able to have the house to herself.
And have Dad to herself?
Yes.
Now, how important was this idea in your mind that going to college would end the molestation by your father?
How important was it?
Yes, how significant a notion was this?
It was the most important thing in my life. It was everything in my life. It was all I thought about.
Why was it all you thought about?
I don't understand.
All right.
Why was it all I thought about?
Yeah.
Because it would end the sex, and that's all I thought about.
How did you feel at 18 about the fact that your father was having sex with you?
I hated it.
And what did you think your options were with respect to sex with your father?
Options? I had no options.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you, over the course of the preceding 3 years, ever consider killing yourself?
Yes.
And what was the reason, as far as you understood it, why you thought about killing yourself?
Because it would end the sex. And that's all I wanted.
And had you ever tried to end the sex through confrontation or violence against your father?
Yes.
Yes? You were violent towards your
Oh,
father?
no, not violence. No, but I said no to him once.
You said no once.
Yes.
How old were you when you said no?
I was 17.
And was there a reason that you gave him for saying no?
Not that I gave him.
Was there a reason though?
Yes.
What was the reason?
I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't want it anymore, and I was really in a bad state that day, and he just walked in the room and I said no.
He walked in the room and there were certain signals and things that he would do, which we'll get to later, about that told you that sex was...
Counsel, let's not lead the witness.
Okay. Were there certain things or signals that he did when he walked into your room that told you that he wanted sex of some kind?
Yes.
And did any of those things happen on that day when you said no?
Yes.
Now, without going into the details of it, on that particular occasion, after you said no, did your father become upset?
Yes.
And did he do anything violent?
Yes.
And would you just tell us, not what happened, but just generically, what violent things did he do?
He threw me on the bed and went to get a knife and put it at my throat.
Put the
Holy
knife in your
shit.
throat.
Yes.
And was there sex with your father that day?
Yes.
Was
Oh my
it that
God.
fourth kind that you called
Yes.
sex? Now, after you returned in the summer of 1989, in August, from Kalamazoo, did you have two separate talks with your father concerning your future in college?
Yes.
Could you tell us, first of all, about the first such talk? Do you remember how it took place?
Yes.
Well, would you tell us? Where were you with your father for that first talk?
I don't remember what the restaurant's name. I think it started with an H. I was out for breakfast with him.
At a restaurant?
Yes.
And do you recall approximately how many days after you returned from Kalamazoo this took place?
Just a few days. I can't tell you the exact.
I can't
tell you.
Speak up.
I can't tell you the. I can't tell you the exact day.
You were alone with him?
Yes.
And what did he? What was the conversation about?
It was about what I was going to do in college, after college.
It's about what you were going to do in college and
After college.
okay. And what? Who was doing the talking? Were you telling your dad what you were going to do in college?
My father was telling me that after college, he wanted me to take business and economics as my major, and after college, he wanted me to take this, I guess, this special program at UCLA, this business law school program that combined it in a certain amount of years, and then after that, he said that he was going to move to Florida. Right at the end of that, and we were all going to go into business. He was going to go into business with me.
Who's we all?
Lyle, Mom, me, Dad.
Okay. So he was telling you what your future was going to be.
Yes.
Is this the future you had planned for yourself?
No, but I mean, I hadn't really planned a future for myself.
You hadn't decided what kind of work or career you were going to do, had you?
No, I didn't know what I was going to do.
And was your father presenting this to you as an idea that he wanted you to think about, or was this a done thing?
No, this is what I was going to do. And that's why he was talking to me, because I needed to get the grades at UCLA to get into the program. And he was concerned about that. And so he was concerned about that. So he was telling me that I was going to have to really, really, really work hard to get the grades, and therefore my tennis was going to have to drop.
Okay. And what did he mean by your tennis was going to have to drop?
Just that he wasn't sure whether or not I was going to be playing on the team, and he hadn't decided yet whether or not I was going to be playing tennis at all. I guess it depended on the grades I was getting. My sense was that he hadn't decided, but he wasn't going to let me play tennis anymore.
Okay. Now, the team that he's talking about which team is that?
The UCLA team.
And how good a team did UCLA have?
I think that year they were number 1 in the nation. I'm not quite sure.
A good team.
Yes.
And had you been promised or assured a place on that team?
No.
Were you still supposed to be trying out for it?
Yes.
In fact, Mr. Menendez, were you originally supposed to go somewhere after Kalamazoo, after the Canada trip? Were you slated to go somewhere?
Yes, I was.
Where were you supposed to go after you visited your dying grandfather?
To a tennis camp in Florida.
And what was the purpose of your going to a tennis camp at that point?
To train for the tryouts of the team.
To see if you could be good enough to get on the UCLA team?
Yes.
So what is your father telling you? Is you're not on the team yet, right?
Yeah, he was telling me, well, my father expected me to make the team if I tried out for it. I guess that didn't work into his calculations. I don't know. But he just told me that he hadn't decided whether or not I was going to be playing on the team, that he hadn't decided whether or not I was going to, he wanted me on the team, and that he would let me know before tryouts.
Now, was this a new experience for you? Your father sitting you down and telling you what you were going to do with yourself and your life and your sports and your work and all of that?
No.
Was this very typical?
Yeah, that's what happened.
So did it, however, bother you?
In some senses, in some ways.
In what way did it bother you?
Well, it bothered me because it was a big challenge for me to get on the team. They didn't have a junior varsity team. They cut that program, so it was just the varsity team. There were only like 13 or 14 players that made it, and so it was a big challenge. And I was really working to get on the team, and I was looking forward to it. But in a sense, it was sort of a relief if the pressure ended.
What pressure?
The pressure of tennis, of just the I felt part of me didn't want to play on the team because I didn't want to have the pressure of winning the matches at the tournament. I mean, at the matches that they played.
What was the source of the pressure? Was this in your head? Was this the coach of the tennis team?
No, it was my father.
Your Honor, if we're going to take a morning break, this is...
All right, we'll take a recess. We'll resume at 20 minutes after the hour. Don't discuss the case with anyone.
All right.
Don't form any final.
So we will cut it off there as well today. That's a good place to cut off, because otherwise we've got quite a long way to go yet. Oh God, yeah, this was rough, very, very rough testimony to go to, or to go through, I should say. His mannerisms seem like, to me, like they ring true. I know there was a lot in the chat about the fact that they're not using the R word to describe these activities. Part of it could have been, I saw somebody say in the chat that it's a triggering word for him. It could also be that this is all too fresh. I mean, he's just recently opened up about it within the last few years. It could be that he's also not emotionally able to approach the word at this point. That's entirely possible. But it also sounds like the prosecution objected to the use of the term because they probably said that it was more prejudicial than probative, and also it kind of concludes or asserts a certain conclusion that is highly prejudicial. So that could be why. There There's also somebody mentioned that they specifically said that it's impossible for a man or a young man to be AR'd because they lack the necessary equipment for it, which if that's the case, that is so horrible, awful, because yes, they absolutely do have the equipment for it. I feel like that's recognized nowadays. It's wild that they went with that argument, but 1993 was a very different time than 2023. So, okay. Yeah. Your everyday sheep, Pamela Bozanich, actually argued that. Is insane to me. Absolutely insane to go with that argument and like not put clown makeup on your face in the process. So anyway, so yeah, so today was very, very rough. So I appreciate you guys sitting with me through this part of the testimony. I anticipate the rest of it is probably going to be just as rough. So, next week we will be listening to more, and it's going to be Erik for a while, I believe. So, thank you all of you for watching and for joining in. Also wanted to say, I meant to mention this at the beginning. I'm sure a lot of folks are watching what's going on in the news, what's going on between Israel and Palestine right now. I'm not going to get political on any of that because I don't talk about foreign policy. But it is heartbreaking what's going on there. A lot of death, a lot of tragedy, a lot of horrors are happening. And I just wanted to say that it's heartbreaking to see what's going on there. And I hope that all of you are safe. I hope that you all have families that are safe at this time, and always, obviously. But I felt like I wanted to just say that it's heartbreaking. But when we are faced with horrible things and awful things, I like to say this bit that, when it feels like the world is a darker place and, we're looking for something, brighter to happen, we can always turn to ourselves and to figure out at least one good thing that we can do for someone else, whether that's a human being or an animal or something. But just one good thing can make the world a little bit of a brighter place. So focus on that, on the things that we can do to make the world a little bit better. That's something that we can all focus on as we turn from this and move forward. But also, oh my gosh, I totally forgot to. Oh, I totally this entire time. 1 second. I've been meaning. I was gonna upload. Okay, it's processing. It's very quick. But thanks to one of our wonderful mods, Draco Amy, for making this wonderful thing. Oh wait, is that the wrong one? Oh, I think that's the wrong one. Wait. No, I uploaded the same one twice. Wait, 1 second. 1 second. Okay, let me. There's a second version of it. 1 second. It's processing. So the second version includes our little Astra, who, just like in real life, scurries on camera and then scurries off. So thank you so much for this little palate cleanser of a swoop. Just to make things, a little bit brighter at the end. So yes, thank you so much. And thank you to all of the mods, of course, as always, for doing a wonderful job of making sure that, especially when we're talking about such sensitive topics like today, that everybody remains respectful, even if you disagree with other people. I love seeing the discourse that 99% of the time happens in this chat is respectful. So I really love that. And I love the fact that the mods do such a great job of helping to guide that. And thank you to everybody for watching. We got some folks that became members, some folks that gifted memberships. And thank you. I really appreciate that. Cause like I said before, this is, it's very niche content. And at some point, maybe the Menendez trial will blow up. Who knows? It's possible. But at this point in time, we're watching this because we are keenly interested in it and understanding it and understanding how trials have changed over time, how culture has changed over time. I mean, this case has so many examples of how our culture has changed. I mean, just talking about who can and cannot be R'd, just that alone is a huge difference from 1993. So anyway, so I love and appreciate all of you guys, and all the folks that are not members, not super chatters, but are watching, whether you are engaging, by joining in the chat or commenting on replay or just lurking, the folks that are just watching to watch. I appreciate every single one of you. And this has just been such a great, such a wonderful, experience to have with all of you, by working through these difficult conversations and these difficult bits of testimony. So anyway, okay. I think that for me about does it. We've got members only on Friday. We've got a video on Trevor Bauer coming out this week. Trevor Bauer and Lindsey Hill. There's a whole, if you're not familiar, ex-MLB, still a baseball player. He's playing in Japan. But we're going to have a video on the allegations, the Me Too allegations against him and the receipts that he dropped in light of the settlement between the two of them. This is going to be a good video. All right. So with that, yeah, that's about it. Okay. I will see you guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week in the meantime, and stay safe and stay loving. Okay. All right. I'll see you guys in the next video, guys.